Wait, let's turn this hall light on in case it's a mirror. And let's turn the bedroom light off. I don't know what Soldier's doing, but... I said, hey! What's going on? Hold on. I gotta get that.
Mike.
I mean, I'm always in favor of sausage. Sausage and pies. Get your mind out of the gutter. Why are you like this?
Why are you like this?
Chat.
Franchise.
No, the cheese, not the cheese. Oh no! I don't think that could have gone much worse.
Fade from memory. Sounds a bit homo to me.
Get rid of this thing.
Oh, there's another one.
I want to get rid of that. Rah!
Right.
Please leave me alone! There's still a thing! Ow, 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 ow. I gotta turn to Swiss cheese.
I've got an idea.
There I was.
Did it just break dance me off of it and almost kill me? I'm pretty sure that is exactly what it just did. My ATV break danced me off of the ATV, almost killing me and destroying it in the process.
Okay, we're gonna have to swap. You're not heavy enough, so tread jumping down onto there.
Oh, get little. Get super little. Okay, never mind. I got an achievement for that, though.
She
that was funny.
me, chat. She moided me.
That was good. That was hilarious.
So,
I don't know how to pronounce that. You cease.
Don't want to. I'm quite amused. You shut your mouth.
You too. Somebody clip his laugh, please.
No.
Right, you? Clip the
Do it. Oh my goodness, that's perfect.
That's who it is.
well, alrighty. Welcome in, Chunky. Congratulations on first. And no, Shrimply Resharkable, you're being thrown to the fishes. That's it. That's it. Throw him to the fish. He shall suffer their fate. That being said, welcome in, everybody. Off to another week we go. So, the plan for today, of course, as per usual, we'll be opening with prayer here shortly. Once we have read through we've done our opening prayer, we will hop into our Bible reading. Today's verse of the day coming from Psalm 23, 1 through 3. And then we're carrying on with our reading through the Bible. Today we're doing Psalms 5, 1 through 7:17. You're shrimply unkrillable? No, you're not. You shall suffer the fate of the fish. A seal reduced to a fish. Most unfortunate. Most unfortunate. A major downgrade, to be certain. But, so that's our plan for the Bible reading, after which, of course, we will hop into our day. So today will be, as per usual, as Mondays dictate. We will start the week off right with some Media Monday shenanigans, and of course then we will get into the we'll also be playing some Satisfactory. Oh hey, the text is scrolling down there now. Good. It wasn't working whenever I was testing it. I might slow it down a little bit more. It looks like it's going a wee bit fast. But at least it's working. Whenever I was testing that yesterday, it was not scrolling. It was just kind of sitting there and not doing anything. And I was like, bleh. Here, let me tinker with that real quick before we get the ball rolling. Let me slow that down a little bit, because those are scrolling by a wee bit fast, in my opinion. That being said, how is everybody? Welcome in. I hope that everyone is off to a good start for their week. Bam, bam. Okay, we'll try that speed. Let me set that for all of them. Okay, hold on. I'm gonna swap screens, see if that gets it working. Well, that's odd. I changed the speed slightly, and now they're not moving again. Most peculiar. Most peculiar. I wonder why. Hold on. Oh. Well. You woke up before stream? Yeah, I noticed. Just before it. Smelly. Silly little fella. He's a silly little fella. That is to be certain. Let's see. Okay. I'll fuss with that more later. I don't know why it was working, and then I changed the speed, and now it's not working. Very odd. Very peculiar. But at least I know it works. So maybe it's just since I touched it. Maybe whenever we start stream next time, it'll work properly. It's a little silly that it's set up that way, but oh well. At least you're here, I suppose. But we shall get the ball rolling, shall we? Heavenly Father, we come to you today, and as we do, we ask that you open our hearts and our minds, that you provide us wisdom, guidance, and discernment, that we may better understand the lessons that it is you intend for us to take from today, whether they be found here in the good word, or they be found in our day-to-day life in some interaction, some conversation. Whatever tool it is you choose to teach us through today, we just ask that you grant us the wisdom and the insight that is necessary, not only to understand the lesson, but to make use of it and to grow as Christians. We ask that you continue to provide a refuge for us, a place where we can gather with our fellow Christians, where we can refresh and renew ourselves. We live in a world full of temptations, tragedies, and enemies all about us, so we see us torn down and led astray, and we just ask that you grant us the strength that is necessary to overcome each and every one of them today. We ask that you lay your healing hands on each and every one of us. You know our personal struggles, whether we have admitted them out loud or not. You know what's in our hearts, you know our needs better than we do, and we just ask that you grant us those needs today. In particular, we lift up Chonky, that as he begins his work this week, that he should be prosperous and successful in it. But above all, we ask for your mercy and for your forgiveness, for we are not but sinners and fools, each and every one of us, and that your will be done in our lives. In your heavenly name we pray. Amen. Alrighty then. So, our opening prayer done. Our verse of the day today, Psalms 23, 1 through 3, from the King James Version of the Bible, the same version of the Bible that we do all of our reading from, though for some reason chapter verse insists on using the LSB, which I don't use. A Psalm of David. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Indeed. If the Lord is your shepherd, you should not have need. Sometimes that is interpreted as, we will not struggle here on the earth. That is not the case. I've never read it that way myself, except for perhaps as a child. As a child's understanding is much more shallow. But it is what it is. Yeah, it's funny because, let's see. No, okay, so their reading isn't like super far off in this, but it is different. Looking at chapter verses quoted, section verses, what I have in front of me. But, oh well. So, carrying on with our reading through the Bible, today we have, oh my goodness, my apologies, I don't know where that yawn came from. We have Psalms 5, 1 through 7. So, give ear to my words, O Lord, consider my meditation. Hearken unto the voice of my cry, my King and my God, for unto thee will I pray. My voice shalt thou hear in the morning, O Lord. In the morning will I direct my prayer unto thee, and will look up. For thou art not a God that hath pleasure in wickedness, neither shall evil dwell with thee. The foolish shall not stand in thy sight. Thou hatest all workers of iniquity. Thou shalt destroy them that speak leasing. The Lord will abhor the bloody and deceitful man. But as for me, I will come into thy house in the multitude of thy mercy, and in thy fear will I worship towards thy holy temple. Lead me, O Lord, in thy righteousness because of mine enemies. Make thy way straight before my face. For there is no faithfulness in their mouth. Their inward part is very wickedness. Their throat is an open sepulchre. They flatter with their tongue. Destroy thou them, O God. Let them fall by their own counsels. Cast them out in the multitude of their transgressions. For they have rebelled against thee. But let all those that put their trust in thee rejoice. Let them ever shout for joy, because thou defendest them. Let them also that love thy name be joyful in thee. For thou, Lord, wilt bless the righteous. With favor wilt thou compass him as with a shield. Psalm 6. O Lord, rebuke me not in thine anger. neither chasten me in thy hot displeasure. Have mercy upon me, O Lord, for I am weak. O Lord, heal me, for my bones are vexed. My soul is also sore vexed. But thou, O Lord, how long? Return, O Lord, deliver my soul. O save me for thy mercy's sake. For in death there is no remembrance of thee. In the grave who shall give thee thanks? I am weary with my groaning. All the night make I my bed to swim. I water my couch with my tears. Mine eye is consumed because of grief. It waxeth old because of all mine enemies. Depart from me, all ye workers of iniquity, for the Lord hath heard the voice of my weeping. The Lord hath heard my supplication. The Lord will receive my prayer. Let all mine enemies be ashamed and sore vexed. Let them return and be ashamed suddenly. Now for Psalm 7. O Lord my God, in thee do I put my trust. Save me from all them that persecute me, and deliver me, lest he tear my soul like a lion, rending it in pieces, while there is none to deliver. O Lord my God, if I have done this, if there be iniquity in my hands, if I have rewarded evil unto him that was at peace with me, yea, I have delivered him that without cause is mine enemy. Let the enemy persecute my soul, and take it. Yea, let him tread down my life upon the earth, and lay mine honor in the dust. Selah. Arise, O Lord, in thine anger. Lift up thyself because of the rage of mine enemies, and awake for me to the judgment that thou hast commanded. So shall the congregation of the people compass thee about. For their sakes, therefore, return thou on high. The Lord shall judge the people. Judge me, O Lord, according to my righteousness, and according to mine integrity that is in me. O let the wickedness of the wicked come to an end, but establish the just. For the righteous God trieth the hearts and reins. My defense is of God, which saveth upright in heart. God judgeth the righteous, and God is angry with the wicked every day. If he turn not, he will whet his sword. He hath bent his bow, and made it ready. He hath also prepared for him the instruments of death. He ordaineth arrows against the persecutors. Behold, he travaileth with iniquity, and hath conceived mischief, and brought forth falsehood. He made a pit and digged it, and is fallen into the ditch which he had made. His mischief shall return upon his own head, and his violent dealing shall come down upon his own pate. I will praise the Lord according to his righteousness, and will sing praise to the name of the Lord Most High. Indeed, indeed. Alright, so next time we'll be reading through Matthew. But that is our Bible reading done for today. Let's see. There's our screen. Which looks a little bit bigger than it's supposed to be. That's odd. Why is it that size now? One moment.
That one and Pirates of Darkwater. I think they were both on at the same time. Listen, they were both good.
That's my purse! I don't know you!
Hold on, let me... I feel like that's more where I had it before. I don't know why it went and adjusted the screen size. It's very peculiar. Okay, that looks a bit more appropriate. I don't know why it was gigantic before, but that was way larger than it's ever been. Goodness gracious. But, alright, so, let's see.
You see, it makes up the entirety of Iraq's coastline, and crucially, despite its size, it gives this country uniquely positioned access to the ultra-competitive
Alright, how
global shipping
is that
industry.
volume balance?
This mere 20-kilometre stretch of water is at the heart of a plan that could make Iraq one of the most valuable trading hubs in the region. Let me explain. This right here is the Suez Canal. For over 150 years, it's dominated the global supply chain.
Oh, I see why it was doing that with the screen size
has
now.
left experts in the shipping industry crying out for alternative routes.
Okay, hold
Iraq
on.
is hoping to answer those calls by creating a new path right here, which it argues would be quicker and safer than going via Suez. But before Iraq can snatch the global supply chain crown from Egypt, it first has to build the biggest infrastructure project in its history. Starting with this, the Al-4 Grand Port. Engineers have had to build colossal structures with limited resources, but when completed, it'll be one of the biggest deep-water ports on the planet, and potentially the most game-changing construction project Iraq has ever built. Across the history of infrastructure, there are a few select examples of projects that came along just at the right time.
But Uncle
and
Dan,
the right
welcome in.
place to make
Varkin, welcome
history.
in. I hope that you all are doing well
Iraq.
today.
Now, to say Iraq has a small coastline is a bit of an understatement. The country's border
Again,
is
let me
over
know how the
3,600
balance of
kilometers,
that volume
and just
is.
58 of those kilometers are on the coasts. But it doesn't stop there, because to get out to the open ocean, it relies on this 20-kilometer wide window. But for the Iraqi authorities, that could be a golden invitation to enter the big league of global trade, because it gives them an opportunity to build the holy grail of international logistics, a deep water port. This is what they're constructing. At the centre of the port are two huge container terminals. These consist of an artificial island which will act as the container yard, while around the outside a wharf is being constructed, allowing ships to dock. The first phase of construction for the wharf began in 2020. While the terminal islands were constructed from reclaimed land, the wharves themselves are built out over the water. Engineers drove 1,700 piles, each 50 metres long, into the seabed using a technique known as a cantitravel, which basically works like this. A few piles are initially driven into the seabed from the land, and a deck is constructed on top. From there, a machine uses that platform to rest on as it drives piles in front of itself while the deck is completed behind it. It's a lot more reliable than other methods like using a boat, which can be affected by the conditions on the sea. The initial wharf was completed in 2024 and will host 5 berths, which will accommodate the first ships into this new port. Now, managing a project like the Al4
Welcome back to
Grand Port
Satisfactory,
isn't just about
everybody.
engineering. It takes some serious
We are working
financial
on
organization
our
too.
new
That's
primary
where
facility
today's
where the
sponsor,
train
Odoo's
station
accounting
is,
app
where
comes in.
Glover
With Odoo,
Station
creating
is.
professional invoices is a breeze. You can generate an unlimited number of invoices instantly and keep tabs on
And
payments.
now
with
we've got
automated
our
follow-ups for late
copper
payments.
facility all
Recording
set up and
transactions
ready
is
to
simple
start
thanks
once
to
power is
AI-powered
run over
features
here.
that recognize and input supplier invoice data, reducing
We've got it set up to
and
produce
errors.
copper wire and
Their
copper
intuitive dashboard provide
sheets,
a
because I
real-time
need sheets
overview
to
of
make
your
pipes,
finances
and I'm
with
going to need a
detailed
lot of
reports and
pipes going
financial
forward.
statements
I can
readily
feel it
available,
already.
empowering you to make informed decisions swiftly.
Move the space elevator over
Odoo
to this new
syncs with over
facility as well.
28,000 banks worldwide.
And we've got this here to
seamless
deal with
integration
excess
ensures that
copper
your financial data
materials.
is always up to date.
Once
and
those
accurate.
10 containers are
Navigating
filled,
local tax regulations can be
the rest will
pretty
go
daunting,
over
but
here
Odoo's
and go
accounting
into the
app
machine.
is tailored to meet local compliance requirements. The best part is that Odoo offers its
Which will
first
give
app
us
free for
some of
life,
those
including unlimited
awesome
hosting and
tickets,
support.
which we will be able to
So
use to buy
streamline
stuff
your
that we
financial
need.
management with Odoo and keep your business sailing smoothly.
Now, though,
Now, before
I
we get any
want to
further,
work on
it's
the iron
worth pausing
facility,
for a
but I'm
second
also
to really get a sense of the
trying to
scale
figure
of
out
the
what I'm gonna
vehicles
do
and
with it.
quantities we're talking about here.
you know,
This is the Colombo Express. It's an example of a Neo-Panamax ship, one of the largest categories of container ship on the seas. Imagine taking the Chrysler building, laying it on its side, and then adding a propeller. That's roughly the size of one of these ships without anything in it. This, meanwhile, is a standard shipping container known in the trade as a TEU. It's the unit that the entire modern logistics industry is based on, and it can hold anything from bananas to iPhones. A Neo-Panamax ship can carry 15,000 of these
so we've
things.
got
Laid out flat,
3
that would cover half the
over
Vatican.
here. No, that
Now,
one.
here's
Okay,
the thing.
yeah. So there are
The ports
3
built to
concrete.
house these gigantic vessels not only need to be big, but
I
also
have to figure out how I'm going to
incredibly
integrate
strong.
this last one, because this
To
last one's
enable
kind
enormous
of
container
out of the
ships
way.
to navigate these small channels in
here
the
all by
ports,
its
most
lonesome.
vessels are equipped with thrusters on their front and rear. The largest container ships can carry up to 120,000 tons. The CN Tower in Toronto only weighs 117,000 tons. So the force
We'll
they
figure
emit to
something out
nudge
for
these
it.
vessels can be potentially devastating to any structure nearby. That's known in the jargon as port scour. Now, typically this is countered by lining the side of the structures like wharves with rocks, but that presented a big problem for AL4. You see, rocks are heavy, and the area around L4 doesn't have enough quarries to meet the demand. Because of the sheer scale of the ports, importing the amount of rock needed was pretty much out of the question. So instead, they turned to an
Hold on,
ingenious
what?
technology. What you're looking at here is a concrete mattress developed by ProServe. It's an innovative solution to port scour, but it has its roots in a long-standing industry technique: formwork. That works by creating a mould out of a material like wood or metal, which concrete is then poured into. Once the concrete is set, the formwork
I
is
see
removed
what
and the structure
I
stays
got
standing.
confused. I
Now,
was like,
the
wait
concrete
a second,
mattress
something's
follows
not
the
adding up
same
here.
principle.
No, this is the concrete
It starts
line.
with a
Okay.
fabric container which uses ties sewn in at intervals to keep its shape.
Okay.
The mattress
Okay,
is
okay,
laid in
okay.
place.
We don't
and
have a
pumped full of
problem. I
concrete,
thought we had a
which,
problem
when
for a
set,
minute.
provides the same level of protection against scour. The technique has a number of advantages over traditional rock armour, not least of which being speed. Rock armour is time-consuming to construct and has to be completed before the deck of a wharf is built. But the concrete mattress can be installed at any point during construction, and that's important
Okay, I'm
because it
trying to
means
think
the
how I
wider
wanna do
construction
this.
process
Do we wanna
is less
connect
reliant
it
on milestones
via
being reached in a particular
train
sequence.
to get the power over here,
Basically, it
maybe?
takes this activity off the critical path.
Seems like probably the
At
best
L4,
way to do it.
that was borne out by the first wharf being completed ahead of schedule in just 37 months. But the most important benefit is the enormous saving in materials. This
I just keep forgetting I
1.7
gotta make
kilometre
that at
stretch
some
of
point.
wharf would have needed armour over 3.5 metres deep, using up to 430,000 cubic metres of rock, enough to fill the rotunda of the US Capitol 12 times over. The concrete mattress, on the other hand, was only
Okay, we
20
gotta go get
centimetres
steel.
thick in most places and used up just 26,500 cubic metres of
We're also
concrete.
gonna
Now, keeping the port structures intact is one thing, but keeping the water deep enough in what is a dynamic marine environment is quite another. The water
Alright,
immediately surrounding
we're going to be
the
building a new
Alford
train
Peninsula
station
is
today,
fairly
which
shallow.
means, you
can
know,
see from this
the
picture
deal,
how
if anyone
far
has an
out the layer
idea
of mud
for a
comes
good
into the
name,
port site.
specifically
The
with
water of the ports is being
keeping in
dredged to a
mind that
depth
we
of
tried to
17
name the rail
meters,
stations
including a turning
after
basin here and a
real
channel
life
400 meters
individuals
wide
that
and
had something to
24
do with
kilometers long,
the train
leading out to
industry.
sea. That's a colossal amount of earth
Though
to be
I am open
extracted.
to
In total,
doing stuff like,
142
you know,
million
someone
cubic
that's from
meters
the
will be
steel
dredged from the
industry,
site.
as that's
But the marine
critical to trains
conditions
as
would
well,
soon
or
see that
something
fill back
similar.
in. Al4 lies in a delta where the Shat
We've
Al
got
Arab
Glover
River meets the
Station.
ocean. The daily flow of the tide pulls sediment from the Shat Al Arab
Who
across
was
a vast
the
area.
fellow that brought
Added
trains
to
to
that,
Japan,
occasional
if I recall
sandstorms in the
correctly.
nearby desert blow fine grains of sand out to sea, which in turn gets washed back up in the same area. To stop the dredge channels from simply filling up again, a massive structure was needed. So they built one. This right here is the world's longest breakwater. At 14.5 kilometers long, it's so huge that it actually needs a secondary breakwater to protect the entrance of the port from waves. The breakwater faced the same issue as the wharves did with the lack of rock, but instead of a next generation product, the solution was just pure numbers.
He's part of the building of the Tokyo line. Okay, yeah. I knew it was something along those lines.
At a cost of $591 million US. While it might be huge, the size of this enormous structure really emphasises the extent of the sediments washing into the site from the nearby delta. Construction on this initial phase of the project is now nearing completion, and the first ships are expected to dock Al4 later this year, but work on the project is going to continue for many more years to come. As well as facilities to accommodate shipping containers, berths are being constructed to transport large, unpackaged goods known as dry bulk. Phase 2 is going to see the creation of industrial facilities like a steel mill and oil refinery, and Phase 3 will see the nearby town of Al4 expanded with new housing, mosques, and a commercial centre.
Chunky.
It's not entirely clear when the Al4 port is going to be running at full capacity. Reports vary, and the General Company of Ports of Iraq didn't respond to our request for comment. But if true, the estimates are staggering. The port will open with 5 berths, capable of handling 3.5 million shipping containers.
Thank you, Chunky.
But that's expected to more than double by the completion of the project. Yet, in the global shipping trade, 7.5 million containers a year isn't that many. But when all the difficulties are finished, Al4 is going to be able to process a massive 99 million tonnes of cargo annually, easily making it one of the biggest ports on the planet. That's half the reason Iraqi officials are hoping the port could herald a new era for the country and even change the balance of power in the region. This is the other half. The Iraq Development Road, a 2,000 kilometre, $19.9 billion US motorway and railway linking Al4 to Turkey in what's been nicknamed the Dry Canal. Design work on the road only finished in September last year, and the project's not expected to complete until 2038. But still, when up and running with the ports, it could shave a massive 11 days off journey times compared to the canal. That's a tantalising prospect for shipping companies looking to avoid the Suez, a demographic that's growing in size. The volume of shipping here has been hit hard by continued piracy in the Red Sea. Last year, revenue dropped by nearly half as ships chose to sail the huge detour around the Cape of Good Hope rather than run the gauntlet through the Horn of Africa. It also goes without saying that the chaos caused by the grounding of the Ever Given made the problems of relying on a single trade route acutely clear. Egypt's loss, so the thinking goes, will be Iraq's gain. It's hard to overstate how much
if
cash
Iraq
and
really
power
wants to
comes
make
from
use of
controlling
it,
a part of the
don't
global shipping
just make it a
industry.
road.
Nearly
Make it a
1 in
road
3
and a
shipping containers
railway.
goes through the Suez Canal.
Because if you can build a
2% of
decent
Egypt's
industrial
entire
grade
GDP
rail
comes from
running
operating
that
this
2,000
stretch of
miles
water.
or whatever they said the
For
distance
Panama,
was,
which operates the world's
that
other
would
great
do
shipping canal, that
wonders
figure is
for
over
shipping.
5%. For Iraq, a country that's been
Especially if you
devastated
build
by
the
decades
rail
of
receival
conflict,
station
hosting
in the
such
port.
a vital link in the global supply chain could not
Make
only
it
give it
one
stability and
big,
wealth, but even
transport
transform it
hub.
into a regional power broker. But before we get ahead
Downside
of ourselves, it's important
to
keep in
clustering
mind
all of that
even
in
by its most ambitious
all that
estimates,
shipping industry there,
Iraq's Dry Canal
it's Iraq,
is not expected to replace the Suez entirely.
which isn't
Rail
exactly
is
known for its
faster, but it's also
stability
more
either.
expensive than sea freight. It also can't compete with Suez in terms of capacity. Even in 2021, the year of the Ever Given grounding, the canal shipped a record 1.27 billion tonnes of cargo, way beyond anything Al4 is designed to accommodate. There's also the issue of security in Iraq itself.
Yep.
While the
Exactly
country's
what I was
security
just
has
saying.
improved in recent years, pockets of Islamic State fighters remain active, as well as the Kurdistan Workers' Party, who've been known to attack pipelines between Iraq and Turkey. Infrastructure has always had the power to improve our lives in ways we often don't appreciate. But sometimes a well-planned and well-timed intervention has the ability to quite literally redraw the map of the world. Over the next 13 years, the tiny Alfor Peninsula will change beyond all recognition. Whether or not it can transform an entire country remains to be seen. This video was sponsored by Odoo. You can learn more about that at the link below. Don't forget that we're inspiring the next generation of builders through our investment into BrickBorrow, a fantastic LEGO subscription service. You can learn more and get started today over at brickborrow.com. And as always guys, if you enjoyed this video and you want to get more from the definitive video channel for construction, make sure you're subscribed to the B1M.
Alright, there we go. I love these videos about like mega infrastructure.
Space carved out in the earth.
If you haven't noticed.
People created this, and they're doing it for a project that's going to change the lives and impact millions of people. Best industry in the world. Welcome to Tokyo.
And if there are two countries I would love to go to visit just to learn about their mega infrastructure, Japan, so the Japanese and the Dutch. Those two have created some insane stuff.
Steve Jobs was still working out of his garage. And it kind of knows a thing or two about building big.
Love to go see some of their
This place
stuff
is
someday.
so big, so sprawling, so huge, so well organised that it's like you're in some kind of bubble. You feel like the place is indestructible. But look a little closer and you realise there's something very different about Tokyo. We have breaking news.
7.1 magnitude wind, flood, landslide warning.
This city is constantly on the brink of disaster. Earthquakes.
Magnitude 5.7 earthquake was felt throughout Tokyo.
Volcanoes.
Mount Fuji is one of the
can cripple the Tokyo area.
Floods.
The disaster is far from over for
impact
residents.
on the Tokyo area.
This is a city that really shouldn't be here, but it is because engineers have developed some of the most extensive and advanced countermeasures anywhere in the world. But it's not enough. The number of threats Tokyo faces and the damage those threats could cause is only getting worse. A quarter of Japan's population now lives in the greater Tokyo area. And the
That's
city
insane
centre
to
accounts for
think
more than
about.
20%
A
of this
quarter,
country's
25%
GDP.
of a country
Now, it wouldn't just be
living
bad
in
for
one
Tokyo.
city.
It will have a knock-on effect for this entire country and even the world. This place, this city, really matters. But Tokyo is not exactly a city that does things by half measures. So when it came to protecting itself from annihilation, it decided to go big by building one of the biggest civic defense projects in history. I cannot describe the feeling of coming down those stairs. This is amazing. How much water are they expecting to flow through here?
This is a machine to simulate earthquake in the laboratory.
I am currently 5 stories beneath the streets of Tokyo. The goal is to achieve nothing less than total protection from everything the world can throw at it for an entire century. This is the $100 billion plan to save Tokyo. I'm so excited for this. On my way to see one of the most iconic buildings in Tokyo. The Tokyo Skytree. It's incredible. It was completed in 2012. The first thing you notice is it's covered in this amazing lattice structure. And that's designed to help it withstand a magnitude 7 earthquake. Now, it's only when you get up high like this that you get a sheer sense of the scale of Tokyo. It spreads out for miles in every direction. But what you also realise when you come up high is how flat the city is. You can sort of see down there through the clouds if the weather was better. This is a really big flat area. Now, because Japan is covered in mountains, cities tend to get constructed on big, large, flat plains like this. But that also makes them sitting ducks for pretty much every natural disaster you can think of.
This is the Pacific Ring of Fire, a 40,000-kilometre tectonic belt. It was this that forced Japan out of the sea in the first place, but also left it studded with volcanoes, 111 of which are still active today. And while you only need 2 plates to grind together to create some seismic activity, Japan lies across 4, which means this one country is struck by 18% of all the world's earthquakes. And as if all that wasn't enough, thousands of kilometres of ocean to the south leaves it wide open to typhoons and tsunamis rolling in from the Pacific. Throughout its history, Tokyo has been quite literally razed to the ground numerous times. But now, with 40 million people living here, that simply can't happen again. Which is why, in December 2022, the city's government hatched a plan. The Tokyo Resilience Project.
Okay, now you're going to have to keep up because this is by far the biggest infrastructure project we've ever covered. Launched back in December 22, it's going to take 18 years to fully complete and cost 17 trillion yen, which is around 109 billion US dollars. This really isn't the case of a new floodgate here or a bit of earthquake proofing there. It's a meticulously planned project to protect every part of this city from disaster. There's no structure too big, no detail too small. What does that look like? Well, it means developing soft infrastructure like establishing evacuation routes and improving response times, but also building some truly epic infrastructure like tunnels. Massive tunnels!
Or widening rivers.
324 kilometres of rivers. There's so much involved because this isn't just about protecting Tokyo from one threat like a tsunami. CRP has identified no fewer than 5 threats that could bring this city to its knees.
It might be a national symbol, but Mount Fuji also happens to be an active volcano that could blow at any moment.
That is true.
But even if
you don't think about it very often,
Tokyo and ash, the city is going to be cleaned up and running again in no time thanks to meticulously planned clearance routes. For those living on nearby islands, new evacuation points are being established to whisk residents away to safety on specially chartered ships.
I mean, like I said, there's a reason that the Japanese and the Dutch are the 2 people that I always quote whenever when I consider mega infrastructure projects. They've both done it. Japan's out here like, let's make hundreds and hundreds of miles of river to protect one city. And the Dutch were like, what if we could cut land out of the ocean? Both have impressed me greatly with their infrastructure projects.
The phones are down and there's a blackout. Well, come 2040, that just won't happen here because the city's building a new power and communications grid that's going to ensure that Tokyo never loses connectivity and never experiences a power blackout.
That means reinforcing undersea cables, building new satellite capabilities for the city, and providing cloud storage for businesses so they're always connected. And that's just scratching the surface on the measures being taken to protect the city from 3 potentially devastating threats. But all of that pales into comparison next to the last 2 mega threats facing this city. Now, before we go any further, if the scale and complexity of mammoth civil engineering projects is difficult to comprehend, then don't worry, because today's video sponsor Innate has your back. If you're working on a complex project, or planning to, you could join over 850 companies around the world which use Innate's suite of applications to keep things on track. The needs of capital construction projects change constantly, which is why Innate's modular software design means you can build up the functionality in your management system as and when you need it. Innate offers unmatched data insights, enabling
Suddenly
you to
remembered
track
where
flows
the train
across all your
station was going to be
processes,
built.
creating a single unified dashboard that gives you the functionality you can rely on to make informed decisions and to reduce risk in your business strategy. Most of all, people trust Innate because knowledge of the construction industry runs throughout the team. Innate is built by the construction industry for the construction industry. So you can be confident you'll get the kind of informed, tailored support your project needs. To find out more about how Innate can transform your project management, click the link below.
I've come to NIED, which is Japan's National Research Institute for Environmental Hazards and Disasters, and all kinds of fascinating experiments. This is also the early monitoring system for earthquakes.
Set up in the aftermath of the 1995 Kobe earthquake, this is a nationwide observation network for earthquakes, tsunamis and volcanoes. Seismic activity is monitored in real time using a network of 2,000 size monitors positioned right across Japan and the surrounding ocean floor. When a disaster strikes, it's going to be detected here first.
The main control is so secret and so secure that we're not actually allowed inside it. But what you can see here on this is where these LED dots are, just how extensive that network of seismometers and sensors is. This is actually slightly out of date. There are now more on the land and more in the waters around Japan as well. And what stands out to you is this plane here, that big flat plain where Tokyo has grown up and been established. And if you look just south of Tokyo, out into the sea, you see there's a collection of islands.
Two of these islands, Shima and Miyake, have erupted 7 times in the last 100 years, and work's underway to establish a permanent evacuation.
One other thing.
It might not seem like it from the endless expanse of concrete, but Tokyo is a city shaped by water. It's part of the reason the capital was moved here from Kyoto. More than 100 canals flow through here, with the city dominated by the enormous spiraling moats around the Imperial Palace. But like so much else here, what actually helped this city to thrive is also its history. Flooding is a critical threat to Tokyo. 124 square kilometres, a fifth of central Tokyo, is below sea level. Just in case of a 60cm sea level rise by 2100. That's more than twice as much that they've risen since the 1970s.
But that's not all. Tokyo is goes into the south, and the current from that brings a steady stream of food that dumps rain on the sea.
Now, that's not the thing, but because of the climate is becoming increasingly subtropical. That means storms are getting more frequent and more severe. It was only getting worse. In 1992, cities government embarked on extraordinary projects in response to this challenge. An underground system made up of 5 silos which collect floodwater from nearby rivers and channel it down a 6.5-kilometre tunnel
into this huge hall I'm currently standing in, this concrete cathedral around me. This is the Metropolitan Area Outer Underground Discharge Channel, or GCANS for short. Is a water tank. It is an enormous space, 25 metres high. It sits 50 metres beneath the city's streets, 177 metres long and 78 metres wide.
This place cost $2 billion and took 17 years to build. Now it's capable of pumping out 200 tonnes of water a second.
I cannot describe the feeling of coming down those stairs into this space. Huge columns of stonework. It is a remarkable space and an astonishing feat of engineering. Now, while the scale of this place might be mind-boggling, here's the thing. The Tokyo Resilience Project is working on doubling the capacity of this system. Whoa! Look at the size of this. So I'm currently 50 metres below ground, inside what is a new water diversion channel. And the scale of this thing is hard to get your head around. Like, the amount of water that could flow through here is mind-blowing. This space is 12.4 metres wide. It runs for 5.4 kilometres, or as it will do when they finish building it. And it's going to connect up to 2 other tunnels to create a network that's 13 kilometres long, the biggest of its kind anywhere in Japan.
And it takes some serious engineering to carve out a tunnel this size. To dig this channel, engineers constructed an enormous TBM, weighing in at a massive 2,800 tonnes.
Dagnabbit, we don't have enough concrete now.
And this is what that tunnel boring machine looks like. This
Go
is
back
the
and get some
amazing
more.
piece of kit that was made.
I knew I should have
huge
just
tunnel
brought a
possible.
massive stack of concrete.
Drop
But
it up here.
I did a half
It's
measure.
the massive cutting head that's pushing forward through the soil, 12.5 metres wide, rotating round to dig out this huge hole. You can see here these massive segments. These are being put in to help line the tunnel wall. This amazing machine you can see just up there lifts these segments up, puts them into the newly formed tunnel to form a complete ring. And these hydraulic jacks push off that last ring to push the cutting head forwards. Build the next bit of tunnel, another ring, push forward, another ring, push forward. All that for 6 kilometres. What blows me away when you're walking down it is the scale. How much water are they expecting to flow through here?
But tunnelling through the earth isn't as easy as lifting tunnel pieces into place. To keep the earth on the other side stable, the TBM uses a water mixture known as slurry to balance the pressure of the excavated soil.
で掘り進めた後はご覧のようにこのようにセグメントといったものをこちらのですねを掘ったトンネルにどんどん土に貼り付けていってこれを持ってトンネルの力をトンネルのですね土の圧力や水の圧力をこれで受けていくと。
So, what are these 2 pipes? What do they do?
シールドマシンを掘り進める際に冷水といわれる泥水を混ぜてトンネルの先まで送り込んでいます。その水圧を持ってトンネルが土の中を掘り進めることができます。また、掘り進めた後には土が出てきますので、その土をこの管を通じて地上に出しています。 いったその間です。
But it's not just the Earth that this TBM's got to contend with. The cutter face is equipped with carbide cutter bits that are 48 times harder than a conventional TBM. That's to enable it to break through into the connecting tunnels, something that's never been attempted before.
こちらのシールドトンネルは鉄筋コンクリートの壁を、シールドトンネルで世界で初めて、抜いていくといった工事となります。それが非常に難しい工事と、中身です。
During a storm, this mega tunnel is going to prevent flooding by siphoning off up to 1.4 million cubic meters of rainwater from rivers across West Tokyo. As water levels across the city subside, the water in here then gets discharged back into the rivers and flows safely out to sea. Along with GCANs, this is part of a vast network of 28 regulating reservoirs across Tokyo. 7 more facilities like that are being constructed to bring the capacity of the network up to 100 millimeters of rain an hour.
In other words, every hour, this network could pump out more rain than London gets in 2 months. And believe me, it rains in London. So why are such big tunnels like this necessary? And what would life be like in Tokyo if this wasn't here? What would happen?
こちらの施設は洪水対策の河川の施設です。こちらが東京は近年非常に雨が強くなっております。そのためこういった施設がなければこちらの流域に住んでいる皆さんの住宅、それから企業、それから東京は鉄道、地下鉄なども多いので、そういった、建物が浸水してしまう。そうしますと、人の命が奪われるだけでなく、都市の機能、世界有数の都市である東京の都市の機能がストップしてしまいます。
That was 100 that it just blitzed through. Good lord.
Just before midday, on Saturday the 1st of September 1923, a magnitude 7.9 earthquake struck an area 50 kilometers southeast of Tokyo. Over 142,000 people died and nearly 2 million people were made homeless. In the fires that followed, 33,000 square meters of Tokyo were reduced to ash.
It was the single greatest natural disaster ever to hit Tokyo, and as is the way with natural disasters, there's nothing stopping something like that from happening again.
In 1995, the city of Kobe was devastated by a 6.9 magnitude earthquake.
Hundreds of thousands of residents are left searching for food, for warmth, for loved ones.
And in 2011, the Fukushima nuclear meltdown was triggered by the massive Tohoku earthquake and tsunami. Now, earthquakes are typically measured by the moment magnitude scale, with each level being 10 times more powerful than the previous one. Anything above level 4 poses a threat to property, while a quake above level 9 would release enough energy to power the US for over 2,000 years. Nearly 600 level 4 or higher earthquakes have already struck Japan in 2024 alone, and many are nervously predicting the big one, a once-in-a-century quake that would rival the destructive power of the Great Kanto disaster. There's nothing the authorities can do here to stop this happening, but there is a lot they can do to stop it destroying the city, and that starts with learning how to predict when a quake will strike. I've come back to NIED to see how researchers are learning to prepare Tokyo for earthquakes.
This place is amazing, this campus. It's like a Disneyland park full of amazing engineering labs. You go to each one and see what they're doing. It's so cool. Wow, look at this. Wow. So this is the giant rock friction apparatus. It's the largest machine of its kind anywhere in the world, and I have never seen anything like it. It is huge. So what this is doing is trying to simulate earthquakes. It's trying to simulate what happens deep below the Earth's surface when an earthquake occurs. So you can see it's got these orange jacks across the top here, are pushing the top rock down onto the bottom rock with incredible force. And you can see this machine's engineered to be really strong to push those two rocks together. And then this huge orange jack on the side here creates a massive lateral force that pushes the bottom rock until it slips against the top rock, mimicking what's happening with tectonic plates deep below the Earth's surface. And what researchers and scientists here are doing is measuring data. You can see these rocks are covered in sensors. They're recording what's happening just before that slip occurs and immediately afterwards, so they can start to begin to predict when earthquakes might occur and warn people in time. So tell me about this amazing machine.
Yeah, this is a machine to simulate earthquake in the laboratory. So we'd like to know what is happening during the earthquake. First of all, we'd like to understand the physics or mechanism of earthquake. And I'd like to find something to predict the earthquake.
The Earth's tectonic plates are constantly pushing against each other along fault lines, like the kind that Japan sits on. Occasionally, those plates slip and the energy released creates an earthquake. Now, exactly where and when that happens is what researchers are using the giant rock friction apparatus to try and find out.
I can see all these sensors on the rocks. They're collecting data about that moment.
Similar to natural case, the fault doesn't slip at the same time. The part of the fault started to slip somewhere and it propagated through the river and see the propagation of slip.
How much do they weigh?
10 tons.
10 tons? And the whole machine you said to me earlier is 200 tons.
200 tons, yes, exactly.
So the data you're collecting from here will start to give you those clues and hints to look for to predict earthquakes and when they might occur. That matters because you can give people more warning that an earthquake's coming, people can get to safety in time.
I hope so, yeah.
What you're doing in this space, in this shed on campus here is really, it could change the world. It could really save a lot of people's lives.
The NIED does more than just measure what happens when an earthquake strikes. This is E-Defense in Hyogo Prefecture, about 400 kilometers from Tokyo. This is the largest earthquake simulator in the world. It shakes a massive plate on 3 axes to simulate the ground conditions where an earthquake occurs, and you can take it up to magnitude 7. It's places like this that have been essential in making Japan a global leader in earthquake engineering. But when it comes to construction, how do you build something that can withstand those enormous forces? Well, I've come to the Mori J. Peter. Completed in 2023, it's Tokyo's first ever super tall skyscraper. This place houses a mix of luxury apartments, offices and retail space. But most importantly, it kind of epitomises the extreme lengths that engineers in the city go to keep buildings standing and the people in them safe.
5 stories beneath the streets of Tokyo, directly under that super tall skyscraper that's rising above my head, you'll find this. Backup energy generators, a huge water supply fed by an underground well, extensive food supplies, batteries, an amazing series of systems that enable this building to keep running independently should the worst happen in the surrounding city. The extent of the engineering down here is incredible. Even this, a 97-ton generator, is sitting on these special springs, these special pads underneath it, that help isolate it from the rest of the structure so it would be protected from the rest of the building when it started to shake during an earthquake.
These diesel generators work alongside a massive bank of batteries in case of an emergency, so that if a disaster destroys the power grid, the tower can be completely self-sufficient. It's so safe here that the skyscraper acts as a refuge for people in the area. Inside this storeroom are enough supplies to feed 3,600 people for 3 days. These kits include everything from tinned food, bottled water, toilets, and even baby supplies. But none of this would mean anything if the building wasn't still standing in the first place. Part of this tower's earthquake defences are made up of hundreds of pistons known as oil dampers located all around the building. But I caught up with Kai Toyama from the structural design team to learn more.
So this is a scaled down model of what we're seeing behind us. We're on level 33, which is here. This is level 34, and this is showing us what happens during an earthquake.
これが柱コラムですけども、地震が起こると建物こういうふうに動きます。ここを見ていただきたいんですけども、動いているのが分かります。でこれがオイルの中で動いているということです。で地震がですね終わると触るとですねほんのり暖かくなっています。つまり地震の揺れのエネルギーが熱のエネルギーに変わって建物の揺れが収まっていくということです。
Wow. So this is another feature that helps this building resist earthquakes. What is this? How does it work?
これは粘性体制振壁と呼ばれる制振装置です。で、これの仕組みもまた模型を持ってきたので、それで説明させてください。壁、この赤い壁がこの透明な壁と同じです。この赤い壁の中にはドロドロした液体が入っています。で、地震が起こると中の液体が動いているのが分かりますか？非常にネバネバした液体なので、人の力でとても動かせません。これ地震の力でこのように動いて先ほどと同じようにだんだん暖かくなります。
This just wall damage like this. How many of them would there be in a building this big?
はい、このビルにはこのタイプのものもやっぱり300機以上あります。
Take care of myself. How dare you?
Wow.
Outrageous.
What blows me away is that this is just behind a cupboard in a corridor. You wouldn't know it was there. But it's a critical feature to keep this building standing. It's amazing.
Currently, the city's evacuation centres can accommodate just over 3 million people. Now, that might seem a lot, but when you consider the size of Tokyo, in the event of a major disaster, those centres could be easily overrun. To avoid that happening, the Tokyo Resilience Project wants to eliminate the need to evacuate in the first place, just like at the Mori JP Tower. This is one of many neighbourhoods in Tokyo with fragile wooden housing which is going to be upgraded. But it doesn't stop there. Bigger apartment buildings like this are also being re-engineered so they can withstand the same level of earthquake as the Mori JP Tower. In fact, when this project is complete, 100% of Tokyo's housing is going to be able to withstand a magnitude 7 quake. In other words, if you're at home and a quake hits, you should just stay where you are. Even if an enormous earthquake strikes, the Resilience Project wants you to carry on with life as normally as possible. But it doesn't stop there. Earthquakes are devastating, and not just because of the loss of life they cause by collapsing buildings. Roads become blocked, hampering relief efforts, utilities burst, and fires spread. When the Great Kanto struck just before noon, thousands of households across the cities were preparing lunch on open stoves in timber homes. The firestorm this created helped make the event the worst disaster in Tokyo's history.
Alright, what are we naming this one?
Even today, the city isn't immune to these secondary effects. About 86 square kilometres of Tokyo is still densely packed with old wooden housing.
We've got our new train station, it needs a name.
Fires. Neighbourhoods like these have been earmarked for redevelopment, which will feature new roads, tall buildings, and parks to act as fire breaks.
And that's not all. Overhead wires and cables like these are prone to collapsing and starting fires. And that's why over 1,000 kilometres of roads across this city
Crawford Station?
Overhead
Why?
utilities replaced
Who is
and moved
Crawford?
underground.
Oh yeah, you mentioned him before, but I don't remember.
Also to improve access routes for emergency.
What also?
Which brings me to the last thing I've come to see. So where are we now? What is this structure?
この永代橋は、関東大震災の時の復興橋梁です。1926年に施工されて、今年齢でいうと98歳です。橋の真ん中が100メートルということで、当時一番最長の橋として架けられました。現在は日本の重要文化財に指定されています。
This is one of over 400 bridges in Tokyo being retrofitted with enhanced earthquake protection. But it's also much more than that. A bridge has stood on this site for more than 300 years, with the previous version destroyed during the Great Kanto earthquake. When this structure opened after that disaster, it was a symbol of Tokyo re-emerging stronger and more resilient than ever. Its re-engineering today represents a renewal of that mission.
はい、地震が発生した時に桁がこっち方向に動こうとしますので、それを抑えるようなシステムになってます。この装置の中にはスプリングが入ってまして、スプリングでエネルギーを吸収するものになってます。こちらのものは橋のちょうど真ん中に設置してますけども、これは当日直角方向ですね。こっち方向の大きな地震に対して
These features we're looking at, the one you just showed me, the one on the side, they're counteracting the longitudinal force across the bridge, and this one's counteracting the lateral force across the bridge. They work together to protect the bridge as a whole.
はい、その通りです。地震っていうのは縦方向、横方向、どっち方向が
We'll work about making these raised at some point in the future. For now, this is just a program to get a railroad built.
This project is vast, not just because of huge underground reservoirs, but also because of stuff like this. They really have thought of everything, from the biggest megastructures right down to the smallest utility cable. And that is how you protect a city the size of Tokyo from every disaster imaginable. As an engineer, how does it feel to be involved in something as huge, important and consequential as the Tokyo Resilience Project? It touches millions of people's lives. You must be very proud to be a part of it.
やはり、強靭化っていうことで、特に日本というか東京っていうのは地震が多いところです。で、そういうものに対して、都民とか市民の命とか財産を守れる仕事につけてるっていうのはやっぱり やりがいがありますし、橋梁技術というところで特化したところで仕事ができてるのも誇りになってると思ってます。
There's a reason why Tokyo is at the top of so many people's lists of must-visit cities. This place is so exciting, so unique. But it's also a place of contradictions. Just when you think it's chaotic and intense, it then hits you with moments of calmness and serenity. So many people live and work here, but it's so organised, everything works so well. It's the world's biggest city, but it's put incredible attention to detail into this project to protect itself and keep its citizens safe. The Tokyo Resilience Project is like nothing I've covered before. It's so big, so vast, so ambitious. And we've barely scratched the surface of it in this video. I've been lucky enough to travel the world and see so many cities, but I've never seen any as prepared as Tokyo for natural disasters. But I guess other cities don't have to be, you know? London doesn't have to worry about earthquakes. New York doesn't have to worry about volcanoes. Tokyo's got to worry about all of that and more. Through all those disasters over the years, this city has learned. It's brought that learning from more than a century into the Tokyo Resilience Project, and it's constantly adapting and getting ready for what might come next. Because as anyone here will tell you, it's not a case of if disaster might strike, but when.
This video was sponsored by Innate. You can learn more about that at the link below. And as always guys, if you enjoyed this video and you want to get more video channel for construction, make sure you're subscribed to the B1M. Bridges are some of the world's most impressive feats of engineering. They have the power to connect millions of people, transforming economies and politics alike. Here, we've rounded up some of the biggest and most challenging bridges being built around the world. Sit back, relax, and take it all in. It's the world's most recognisable bridge and an icon of America.
The Golden Gate of San Francisco, one of the most difficult underwater construction feats ever attempted.
Defying incredible odds during its construction, the Golden Gate has stood for over 80 years and remains a critical piece of infrastructure, not just a pretty sight. Today, it's almost impossible to imagine San Francisco without this engineering marvel of Unless you look to Hollywood, they love to imagine it. But these frightening visions are now a very real possibility, thanks to a threat that's loomed over California for decades.
Seismologist Lucy Jones says the recent earthquakes are sending a message that an even bigger one is lurking.
The term the big one, it's such a big event, you change the nature of society.
The iconic Golden Gate Bridge may not survive this massive earthquake unless it's given some serious upgrades. Fortunately though, that's now what it's getting in the form of this huge seismic retrofit project that should see it stand for many more years to come.
It's vitally important that we protect this icon, not just so people can come and take photos, but so that our region can continue to function after a major seismic event.
For decades, this remarkable bridge has been the power and potential of human ambition. A bold and formidable source of wonder for people of all ages and, of course, tomorrow's young engineers. The structure simply has to keep standing, if only to remind us of what's possible when we believe that we can. This is the story of one of the world's greatest feats of engineering, of how the Golden Gate Bridge came to be, and of how it's now preparing for the future.
Don't have this stuff. Okay, fine. We'll just do it this way. It'll look janky, but...
There aren't many things more symbolic of America than this long stretch of steel that sits just north of San Francisco. Many factors have contributed to its iconic status, from its size, looks and location to its countless movie appearances. But what's often forgotten is the incredible tale of its construction. Long
there, we even now have our first introduction of the use of actually lifting the rail up.
It's wide and deep at over 100 meters and has fast-flowing waters. So back in the 1920s, most people discounted building any kind of structure as a way to cross it. The only way to get from one side to the other, unless you fancied a very long drive, was by ferry. But as car ownership took off in America to the point where millions of vehicles were piling onto these boats every year, the service became far too congested. Another way over the water was sorely needed, and in the eyes of city officials, a bridge would do nicely. But turning such a bold and daring idea into reality wasn't going to be easy, as the Straits geography presented extreme challenges. To take on the task, the city appointed engineer Joseph Strauss. He had a great track record in bridges, but his ideas weren't always to everyone's taste. The Golden Gate was no exception, and his first design, tabled in 1921, was widely criticised. Reluctantly, Strauss agreed to work with 3 other engineers and architects on a new iteration. This one was approved by both the government and the public.
We're just gonna do it now. Save ourselves the trouble having to do it later.
By 1929, the vision was complete.
What's going on, Chalky?
But for the Golden Gate Bridge Highway and Transportation District, that's a special company that had been set up to build and operate the bridge, the challenges had only just begun.
The team was met with thousands of challenges, from the firm that ran the ferries project. On top of that, what was then called the US Department of War was concerned the structure would become a sitting duck for enemy bombers, and that the bridge wouldn't be visible enough in foggy conditions. They even called for it to be painted yellow and black
The rail
so
supports?
you couldn't possibly miss it. A decision we're kind of glad got overruled. Then came a huge financial crisis which triggered the Great Depression and wiped out all of the planned government funding. To keep the project alive, and in a remarkable demonstration of public support for the bridge, the people of San Francisco voted for a $35 million bond issue using their homes as collateral. At long last, construction could begin. It's hard to imagine how the first teams must have felt in January 1933, arriving at the site on day one and looking at the huge expanse of water that lay in front of them. Their belief in their own abilities to build such a structure is awe-inspiring. Things all started with the two main towers. Standing over 220 metres tall, these immense structures each required 40,000 metric tons of steel.
This is going to be a pain in the butt, I can already feel it.
Both were built in prefabricated sections, shipped all the way from the East Coast via the Panama Canal.
The North Tower came first and was by far the easier of the two to build, mostly because it sits on the land. But the tower towards the south side of the Straits was a lot trickier.
Building over 300 metres out in the sea, surrounded by water, is not easy. First, a large oval barrier was constructed at the end of a temporary pier, which would also act as the base. Nicknamed the bathtub for obvious reasons, it was done by pouring concrete into a wooden formwork through underwater tubes. When it was set, the water inside was pumped out, allowing more concrete and steel reinforcement to be added inside before the tower itself could start to rise above. At around the same time, the huge anchorages for the suspension cables that would lie on either side of the strait were built too. Altogether, that took around 3 years to complete. With the massive towers in place, the task of connecting them with cables began. With shipping lanes closed, a boat was used to pull the first wires across the strait. They were then lifted up into cradles at the top of each tower by a crane. Next, a platform was set up so the rest of the wire strands could be sent across the strait and secured into those anchorages before being passed back again. It's a very long and drawn-out process known as spinning. Just over 6 months later, more than 27,000 individual wires had been spun, with a combined length of around 80,000 miles. Hydraulic presses had compacted them into single large cables, and for the first time, there was a physical man-made link across the strait. Then came the bridge deck. To build this, vertical cables were hung down from the main ones to support steel trusses. This was done right across the bridge until the two sides connected. Concrete was then poured onto this base, creating the roadway, the last major piece of the puzzle.
Now, as you've probably noticed, health and safety was a little bit more laid back than it is today. Those at the top of the towers worked for months in 45-mile-an-hour winds over 200 metres above the water, and there were sadly many instances of workers falling from the bridge. Despite the multiple fatalities, the addition of a safety net did save many lives too, with survivors becoming members of what was dubbed the Halfway to Hell Club. Tragedy struck on one occasion when a machine fell into the net, taking many workers with it. The net collapsed under the weight of all the machinery, and 10 people were killed.
Finally, in 1937, the bridge that no one thought could ever be built was completed on budget and ahead of time.
On budget and ahead of time? That would never happen nowadays. That's like some miracle speak that just occurred.
50 years later, the city held a similar pedestrian walkover to celebrate the bridge's anniversary. But in half a century, the Golden Gate had gained a lot more admirers.
There were 100,000 people that made it onto the bridge. Quite a lot.
Serious overcrowding saw the typically arched bridge flatten under the immense weight of the crowd.
Are you kidding me, game? Come on.
Extremely dangerous incidents that led officials to commemorate anniversaries in different ways ever since. Today, the Golden Gate is as important as when it was first opened. Just ask US Secretary of Transportation Pete Buttigieg.
This bridge plays an indispensable role in the safe movement of countless people and goods across this region.
37 million vehicles cross it every year, including half a million freight trucks. And it's used by huge numbers of pedestrians and cyclists too. Clearly, it would leave a huge hole, both literally and figuratively, if anything bad were to happen to it. And we already know what that would look like because we've seen it multiple times in the movies. It's been nuked, destroyed by a tsunami, and even bitten in half by a giant shark. Thankfully, in the real world, it remains very much intact, but that doesn't mean
Can I help you down there,
sir?
sir?
You see, the bridge, though seismically engineered when it was first built, was constructed right in between two fault lines, meaning it sits in the middle of an earthquake zone. To make matters worse, experts have been saying for years that this part of California is overdue for a particularly large quake known as the Big One.
We are due for the big one.
A reminder that the Bay Area was still at risk of that big one coming.
It is the big fear for the people of California, and they know that someday, sometime, it will happen.
This could be devastating to buildings and infrastructure in the area, including the Golden Gate. Other bridges and roads around the bay have fallen victim to seismic activity in the past, like the Cypress Freeway in nearby Oakland.
Oh my God, look at that. The freeway has just completely collapsed.
Back in 1989,
Upside to
the
building this
7.1
raised, and now I don't have to
earthquake
follow
hit
the
region, causing
coast.
68 deaths,
I can
thousands of
actually,
injuries, and billions of dollars worth of damage.
Save a little
Afterwards,
bit
the
of
Golden Gate
materials
Highway
doing
and
this
Transportation
way.
District conducted a vulnerability study on the structure.
It found that an earthquake of magnitude 7 with an epicenter close to the bridge could cause severe damage to it. And if an even bigger one hit, with a magnitude of at least 8, the viaducts leading up to the bridge could
Also gives it much more
collapse.
gentle curves for
Now,
the
while
rail,
the bridge is deemed
which
safe
is good.
today, the decision was taken to undertake a full seismic retrofit in 4 phases.
The first one, which took place between 1997 and 2001, focused on the North Approach Viaduct, where the anchorage for the cables on the Marin side of the bridge is kept.
That work included strengthening the foundations of the area, replacing 4 supporting steel towers and strengthening them, installing seismic expansion joints, installing isolator bearings that minimize the effect of ground motions on the structure and the trusses specifically.
These isolator bearings sit on the horizontal supports underneath the roadbed and the 4 vertical towers, reducing the amount of seismic energy transferred from the ground to the trusses. They're made up of thin layers of rubber and steel with a lead core in the centre. This enables them to move laterally in the event of an earthquake while retaining high vertical stiffness, with the core deforming and acting as a damper. Phase 2, which took place between 2001 and 2008, saw a lot of the same work from Phase 1 repeated, but on the south side, with a few notable exceptions. The southern end has the distinctive 4-point arch, which was upgraded into a giant energy damping element, with new bearings, energy dissipation devices, and isolation joints. Surrounding the arch are 2 massive concrete pylons, which were modified so they too dampen seismic energy. It was achieved by expanding their foundations both above and below the surface, drilling holes deep into the bedrock and inserting pre-stressed steel tendons. All of this means the pylons can now rock in the event of an earthquake, with the tendons pulling them back into place.
The bridge is safe today after the second phase of the seismic retrofit for an earthquake up to a low 8 in magnitude. And so once that phase was completed,
Faithful, thank you for the alert.
Sigh of relief. Our work is not fully done as we embark on the last phase.
So, if a high magnitude earthquake were to hit near the bridge today, there's still a chance this critical transport link would need to close afterwards, even after all that work. But now, following the completion of Phase 3A,
Wasabi, welcome in.
focused on strengthening the anchorage on the north side, Phase 3B is almost ready to begin. In December 2022, the bridge secured a $400 million federal grant as part of the $1.2 trillion bipartisan infrastructure law. That's around.
Some of them do on a dang old human man, boy. I tell you what, I get a goddamn superhuman, innovative, animated dang old brother, so that anything you say is ricocheting back at you, man. Devastating more than ever, demonstrating how to get a dang old audience to feel like a letter day. Faded like a farmer's tan, man. I tell you what, here's getting worked up, complain hot like propane, boom, Howard splitting them facts, man, spinning them rhymes like a dang old tornado, jib jabbing like it just ain't no thing. Why be a god and not a dang old king?
And installing more seismic energy dissipation.
Well, thank you, Wasabi.
Special plates made from stainless steel and bronze will slide together using a process called abrasive friction to limit seismic forces on the structural components. The towers themselves are also being upgraded. The bases are being strengthened and equipped with steel plates, new structural steel is going in, and they're getting a lick of paint too.
It's all a lot of work, and it's going to take 3 decades and several $1 billion in total for this has to happen. Not just so we can all admire this beautiful, fantastic bridge, but so that this part of America
In fact, right across the US, there are similar cases of bridges that were built a long time ago now in urgent need of improvements, albeit for many different reasons. Some 46,000 bridges around the country are considered structurally deficient. They might not be in earthquake zones or have the same iconic status. But if nothing is done to these crumbling structures that so many of us depend on, the results could be catastrophic.
As it steadily closes in on a century of service, the Golden Gate Bridge remains as vital to the people and economy of California and the wider US today as it did when it first opened. Its construction really proves what humanity is capable of when presented with a challenge, and the ongoing project to bolster its defences against the scariest of dangers really keeps that spirit alive. This remarkable structure remains the single most important piece of US road infrastructure today, 18 years after its completion. A powerful reminder of how construction shapes and enables so much of our world, and a truly compelling tool to inspire the next generation of engineers.
There. Now it's almost all raised. I think there's 1 or 2 sections that touch the
in the
ground.
last couple of years, you've probably heard something like this.
The global supply chain isn't functioning as it normally does.
And you can't find lumber to build a new home. Well, you can't find products to stock the shelves.
Now, you might be picturing busy ports in California, or of course the Ever Given wedged in the Suez Canal. But a major bottleneck in the supply chain is actually right here, at the border between the US and Canada.
Alright, we've got
The bridges that
Glover and
connect
Crawford
Detroit are some of
connected
the
now
most
to each
important bits of
other.
infrastructure in the region. In fact, they're so important
It is
that there's a kind
very
of quiet
basic,
competition
but
underway to build the best one.
we do have it, so at least there's that, you know?
The newest bridge on the block is the Gordie Howe International. Pushing the bounds of engineering, it's set to become the longest cable-stayed bridge in North America. But this is more than just a crossing, it's also a business opportunity, because yes, bridges can make money. And there's a lot of money to be made here. This is how one construction project is transforming the US Canadian.
And we will have to build 1 more train station, go for a test run. We can't do a test run yet. We gotta go get the materials that we need to connect
relationship
power.
in the world. In 2021, Canada overtook China as the US's top trading partner, exchanging $664 billion worth of goods. Nearly a quarter of that trade happens here. Detroit is a huge automaker, so a lot of vehicles and auto parts are shipped back and forth, along with things like cosmetics, vaccines, and even blood. Every day, more than $300 million worth of goods travel between Windsor and Detroit. That means a lot of taxes and tolls are being paid on bridges like this. That toll revenue often goes towards paying back the cost of construction and maintaining the structure. But while most toll bridges were taken over by state highway departments in the 20th century, there are still a handful of toll bridges owned by private companies. Like the 92-year-old Ambassador Bridge, just a couple of miles away from the new Gordie Howe. It's been privately run since 1929.
Hello,
and was
Christ's
taken
follower.
over by
How are you
billionaire
doing today?
Manuel Moron
Welcome in.
the late 70s. Today, trucks pay $45 just to cross it. And there are a lot of trucks that cross the Ambassador Bridge. In 2021, an average of 263 trucks crossed the 4-lane bridge every hour. On particularly busy days, it's more like 500 trucks an hour. All of that traffic is good for business, but not so much for travel time. And that's where the Gordie Howe Bridge comes in. Originally proposed nearly 2 decades ago,
Just
it
did one round of
alternative
dance?
to the overcrowded Ambassador Bridge, and getting it built is a massive undertaking.
What do you mean a round of dance?
The project's divided up into
I'm
4
curious.
main components: roadwork at a new interchange in Michigan, the US point of entry, the Canadian point of entry, and of course the bridge itself.
Or
Once
round
complete,
one
it'll be
of
the longest
dance.
cable-stayed bridge in North America, stretching 853
Like a
meters
competition
across the
or
Detroit
something?
River. The $5.4 billion project
Regardless, I'm glad to hear that
you
you were doing well, though.
But it hasn't been an easy path to get here. There's been one major roadblock along the way. Remember Manuel Moron, the guy who owned the Ambassador Bridge? Well, he also owned the duty-free shops at the end of the bridge and tunnels, because why not own it all? Moron made a lot of money off this trade corridor, and he didn't want someone else taking potential traffic away from his empire. So when a new
Dance
bridge
classes
was
on
proposed
Monday?
back in
Ah, I
2004, he did everything he could to stop it. He sued the governments of Canada and Michigan to try and block its construction. Instead of a new publicly owned bridge, he came up with the idea of building a second stretch of the Ambassador Bridge, which he would own. He spent millions of dollars trying to pass a ballot measure that would make it harder to get the bridge approved, but the measure didn't pass. He even ran a cable TV advert asking then President Trump to block its construction.
Dear Mr. President, there are 2 grand new bridges being proposed in Detroit between America and Canada.
After nearly 2 decades of battles, Moron's efforts failed and construction began in 2018. The next year, Trump allocated $15 million in federal funds for the Gordie Howe Bridge. For all the time and effort that went into the political fight, the engineering challenge of actually building the bridge still lay ahead. The structure will be held up by a series of cables fanning out directly from 2 main towers, which will bear the weight of the road. Now, that's different from a suspension bridge where the cables spread out across a suspender between the towers. For a while, suspension bridges were the go-to choice for mid-length crossings in America. Think the Golden Gate or George Washington Bridge. But as cable-stayed bridge design became cheaper, quicker and more efficient, it began to make a comeback. The Gordie Howe Bridge.
I'm about to just make a processor again, that way I've got something I can toss all of this biomass into so that I don't have to do this myself.
They're designed to resemble the curvature of an ice hockey stick. It's fitting given that this is Canada and the bridge is named after a legendary hockey player. The towers are set to become some of the tallest structures in the region, but before building up, the crew had to drill down. To create a stable base for the towers, they dug 6 drill shafts deep into the bedrock below each tower leg, and then filled them with steel wires and concrete. From there, they built the base of the tower and started working their way up. Now, because the towers are so tall, there's a system of hydraulic pipes used to pump concrete from the ground all the way up to the top of the structure. The head of the tower will have steel anchor boxes surrounded by concrete, which will hold the base of the cable stays. The cables will then be strung from the top of the tower directly to the road deck. The main section of the bridge is going to be built over the water using something called the unbalanced cantilever method. Here's how it'll work. Starting from the towers on the shore, segments of the bridge will be added one at a time until they meet in the middle. At the edge of the road, a crane will place steel girders and floor beams to form the base of the road. Then precast concrete slabs are added and fresh concrete is poured on top to fuse them together. Finally, a crane will lift the cables from the road deck and secure them to the top of the tower. That process is repeated until both sides connect in the middle.
That is an interesting way to do that.
Up to 12 days to install, and everything can be transported over the bridge itself, so there's no need to move anything through the water below. Once complete, there'll be 6 lanes of traffic and a path for pedestrians and cyclists. This project comes at a crucial time for American infrastructure, as bridges all across the country are reaching the end of their lifespan. The Gordie Howe Bridge is an impressive feat of engineering, but better yet, it has the potential to shape one of the most important border crossings in the world. Maybe all that political drama will finally be water under the bridge.
Look at that stuff zooming. I love these level 4s. I cannot wait to make these the standard. They're so speedy. We're playing Satisfactory.
It's one of New York City's most famous landmarks.
Playing Satisfactory and watching videos about infrastructure.
Bridge construction. But this much-loved crossing had a tumultuous beginning.
Which is what I am inclined to do on my Mondays. I like to do this
its
stuff.
Construction was marred by
It pleases me greatly.
And the death of its key visionary. The Brooklyn Bridge only exists today because of the determination and resolve of one
woman. Glorious.
The Brooklyn Bridge was the vision of John Roebling. A gifted engineer, he lobbied for the construction of what he called the greatest bridge to ever be built, linking Manhattan and Brooklyn with what would be the first fixed crossing over the mighty East River. After a decade of campaigning,
I think I got everything I need to set up the power grid over there to the rail line.
As he was surveying the
and
site,
then we can test our new
was
railroad
crushed
and see how it works.
As a barge came into dock, he contracted tetanus.
Actually, hold on. There is one more thing we're gonna have to do. That occurs to me.
The role of chief engineer fell to his son, Washington Roebling. Immersing himself in the bridge's construction, Washington developed decompression sickness from spending too much time in the caissons, which were pumped full of pressurized air. Washington was left debilitated, with some reports describing him as partially paralyzed and deaf, struggling with his eyesight. He'd go on to battle the effects of this illness for the rest of his life. Washington's wife was one of the few people to see him in this state, and under his guidance, pledged to continue his work.
That. Don't have any. Oh no, wait, we do have some
Emily
rubber
Warren
over here.
Roebling shared her husband's passion for engineering and knew the bridge herself, inside and out. Washington taught her everything he knew, and she quickly gained an extensive knowledge of strength of materials, stress analysis, cable construction, and catenary curves. With a main span of nearly 500 metres, Washington and Emily were building the longest suspension bridge in the world at that time. They were pioneering new methods of engineering and constructing the first ever twisted steel cable crossing. There weren't other existing structures to learn from. Initially, Emily worked as a secretary for Washington, becoming his eyes and ears on the construction site. She would take his orders and liaise with the workers, then report back. She soon took on greater roles, negotiating supply materials, overseeing contracts, and acting as a spokesman on behalf of her husband to the board of trustees. It wasn't long before she took on all the duties of the chief engineer. Though never given the official capacity, she essentially became the project manager of the Brooklyn Bridge. Emily and Washington Roebling designed the rest of the project together, building off the early plans left by Washington's father. On May 24, 1883, after 14 long years of construction, the bridge finally opened. And in honour of her dedication and work, Emily Warren Roebling was the first person to cross. In the 137 years since, the structure has become an icon of New York City, remaining a major crossing used by millions to this day. While Emily spent the first 20 years of her adult life fighting to build the Brooklyn Bridge, she would spend the rest of her life fighting for women's equality, becoming a leading figure in the movement. In a much acclaimed essay she later penned, titled A Wife's Disabilities, she passionately argued for women's rights, drawing on her own experiences of the discriminatory practices so often levied against her sex.
Oh boy.
Today, the bridge holds a plaque in dedication to Washington, John, and Emily. And though the paper did acknowledge her contributions when the bridge first opened, in 2018, the New York Times finally published an obituary for Emily Warren Roebling, honouring her as the woman who built the Brooklyn Bridge.
Okay, that's a bit of a stretch, but I'm not surprised that they did that. That does check out with
Turkey has a new
with
bridge,
the habits of the media.
I mean, really big.
Played an important role. She did not
The
ditch
longest
it.
suspension bridge the world has ever seen.
Bridge lies over the Dardanelles Strait,
linking Turkey's east and west.
It's the longest suspension bridge in the world, spanning 4.6 kilometres across the Dardanelles Strait. If you put it in London, it would dominate the skyline and rise higher than the Shard, the tallest building in Western Europe. This remarkable feat of engineering quite literally connects Europe to Asia and crosses one of the most important and busiest trade routes in the world. But constructing it wasn't easy, and the $2.8 billion mega project had to withstand earthquakes, storms, and some politics. This is how the world's longest suspension bridge was built. On the 18th of March 2022, Turkey's President Erdogan opened the 1915 Çanakkale Bridge. It finished 18 months ahead of schedule, but had been a long time coming. Now, the Dardanelles Strait's always been a pretty critical piece of Turkey's geography. It's a narrow stretch of water that averages just 4 kilometres wide, and it's vital in connecting the Mediterranean to the Black Sea, giving some of the most resource-rich countries access to the outside world. This strait, along with the Bosphorus, also represents the effective border between Europe and Asia, and before the Çanakkale was built, there were only 3 bridges and 2 tunnels linking the continents at this point, all located in Istanbul. As you might imagine, that caused plenty of congestion, and a crossing over the Dardanelles to solve the problem was first pitched way back in 1989. Famed bridge designer William Brown was even commissioned to design a structure following the success of his second Bosphorus bridge in Istanbul in 1988. But the plans stalled. In 1995, the project was declared unfeasible, and it was more than 2 decades before another idea was put forward. This time around, the funds were secured, and engineering technology had progressed by 20 years. It was time to make history. Given the size of some ships using the strait, engineers opted for a suspension bridge design.
Suspension bridge technology is more expensive than cable-stayed bridge technology, but the biggest cable-stayed bridge in the world has a span of around a little bit more than half of Çanakkale, and you can't go much bigger than that for this type of span, which you have on Çanakkale due to the...
Now it can go both ways.
You end up with a suspension bridge.
These are huge. I mean, the vessels sailing through the Strait of Çanakkale are among the biggest vessels in the world.
2 enormous 318-metre high towers were planned on either end of the strait, supporting the 2-kilometre main span between them, the longest of its kind in the world. A pair of 59,000-ton caissons were submerged some 40 metres below the surface, one on the European side and one on the Asian side of the water. They would act as the tower's waterproof foundations. Additional steel platforms were then attached so the towers could be mounted above sea level.
There's a number of high environmental and accidental loads that we are considering. The wind load, we are concerned for aerodynamic stability, and we are of course concerned with earthquake. We are concerned with the ship impact loads, but also a very special consideration for such a bridge here is to be able to handle the traffic loads. But of course wind is the first and primary concern for such a long suspension bridge is aerodynamic stability.
The Turkish government wanted the bridge to be opened in time for the country's centennial in 2023, and that put a strict deadline on every element of construction.
The prefabrication requirement was primarily coming out of a request for fast construction time. We've had a very tight construction schedule for this bridge being one of the challenges, so actually it's today it's not even 5 years since we started on this project.
Once the towers were finished, the cables between them were then strung strand by strand in a process that took more than 162,000 kilometres worth of wire. That's enough to loop around the globe 4 times. The main deck was then suspended from the cables an incredible 72 metres clear of the water. The strait is notorious for strong winds and large annual storms, so the deck was built with a twin-box girder structure with a 9-metre gap in between. That helps winds to pass through the bridge more easily and improves its stability.
So you have what we call a twin box. We split the box in 2. We have a gap in the middle, and then they're transversely connected with cross beams that works much better and gives much better aerodynamic stability.
Now complete, some 45,000 vehicles are expected to cross the bridge every day. It's transformed a ferry journey that at its worst could take upwards of 5 hours to a mere 6-minute drive. And despite its $2.8 billion cost, the crossing is expected to add $5.7 billion to the economy. It's actually all part of a wider infrastructure blitz that President Erdogan has spearheaded across the nation, including a new airport in Istanbul, rail and road tunnels beneath the Bosphorus, and most ambitiously of all, a proposed $15 billion canal in Istanbul that would effectively turn the city into an island.
Canal Istanbul is a 45-kilometre waterway running parallel to the Bosphorus Strait, connecting the Black Sea to the Mediterranean. But many say the multi-billion-dollar project is far too costly given Turkey's economic
Nothing like the
struggle.
industrial complex destroying the natural environment. Progress. I mean, yeah. I'm not doing any kind of notable damage. Can't put the blame on
We're
me.
against it because it threatens Istanbul completely. Its water, its nature, its security and earthquake safety. It threatens life in this city.
As if its record-breaking engineering weren't enough, there's actually more to the 1915
Besides,
Bridge.
I do it willingly. Also, I think if I'm
Firstly, the whole project is wrapped up in national
power
symbolism.
runs
Painted
through
in
the
colours of
rail,
Turkish
so we
flag,
actually
its
have
2023-metre midspan
power
is an
transferred to the
allusion
other
to Turkish
stations, but
Republic's
we will see. We'll have to go
100th
over there
anniversary in
and
2023.
manually
And the name of the
bring
bridge
the train
refers to a
over.
World War I battle fought on this very site. But it's the contrast with war that's perhaps its most impressive trait. The bridge was assembled by an international team from all corners of the globe. Cranes were shipped from Australia, designs were drawn up in Denmark, and finance came from South Korea. All to build a bridge in Turkey.
It only
that
covers the
connects
surface.
Asia
You
and
plan to
Europe.
make it 100 times
100
worse.
years ago,
I
many
mean,
of
I
these
really
countries were
like.
at war with
I
each
keep
other,
looking
fighting
at the
on
stuff
very
that the devs
shores
say
the
that they
bridge
will
was built
do
on.
and won't
The
do, and one of the
1915
big
Battle
ones
of
I'm
Gallipoli,
hoping
which the
for
bridge commemorates,
is that they
one
will
sealed to the histories of
eventually
both Turkey and
give way.
Australia.
They said that they'll never add terraforming, like changing the surface.
Suspension bridge is a testament not just
But
to
I'm hoping
engineering,
that they'll
but
backtrack
to
on
what
that
can be
eventually.
accomplished when nations combine their
I
talents.
want to be
At a
able
time
to
of such
like
uncertainty and
warp
conflict,
this planet
structure reminds us
to
not
fit
just
my
of the
needs
power of
better.
construction, but of what we can achieve on this planet when we work together.
Chonky missing out on the first ever running of the train because he had to go and lurk now.
Consisting of 3 cable-stayed bridges, 3 man-made islands, and one of the world's longest sea tunnels. The entire project has taken 18 years to construct at a cost of over $15 billion. The 55-kilometre crossing connects Hong Kong, Macau and Ukraine, drastically reducing journey times between the three cities and standing as a testament to the engineering might of the Chinese. This is the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge.
Oh, okay, cool. It won't go off. I wasn't sure.
The Pearl River Delta is one of the most densely populated areas on Earth, with some 68 million people living in the cities that surround the mouth of the river.
That pleases me greatly, though.
Hong Kong in the 1980s
Our first
and 1990s
successful train
led to numerous new
ride.
road connections across the border into mainland China. These road connections continue to be improved on the eastern side of the delta. However, connections to the west were
Okay,
lacking,
it's docking.
and the most direct route involved a 160-kilometre, 4.5-hour car journey. Following the return of the British and Portuguese colonies of Hong Kong and Macau to China in 1997 and 1999 respectively,
It'll be curious. Once I start actually moving materials between the two bases, I'm curious to see what that's going to be like. Right now, I don't really need to move any of this to the other facilities yet, but
advantages, the chance to increase
you may or may not be stuck.
reduce congestion at border checkpoints, and cut carbon emissions, the project was approved. Construction began on the 29.6-kilometre Chinese section of the crossing in 2009. This element takes the route across 22.9 kilometres of elevated roadway and 3.
Okay, so this train's doing a casual 118 kilometers an hour right now. That's not bad. That lets me get around much quicker, too, which is nice. You mean the train? No, the train's not stuck.
This bridge allows the large ships to pass without the need to navigate around or under the
120. I like it.
The roadway re-emerges
section of the crossing commenced construction in 2011 and links to Hong
That
Kong
pleases
itself
me greatly.
via a 12-kilometre elevated roadway.
But that means now Glover and Crawford are connected, which means our oil facility and our newest major factory are now connected to each other. Which means now it's time to just settle in and start trying to get this place spun up properly.
Over the bridge's impact on local dolphin populations were raised,
Because we do have a bit of progress, but we still got a ways to go.
Hong Kong and Macau's special administrative status from mainland China, checkpoints
as this facility isn't even operational yet.
And the passage of people around the region.
Once it's done, it should become my absolute primary foundry, and everything will be done here.
As vehicles change over to the left-hand side,
we still got some work to do to get that all set up, you know, because, oh boy.
While the project has been hailed by many as an engineering achievement, it has not been without controversy.
But I am quite pleased with it so far, because we've got our
cost overruns.
Well, no, because I'm gonna have to build at least 2 more railway stations too. We're gonna figure things out. We'll figure things out.
Hong Kong officials arrested a number of lab technicians after concrete strength test results were shown to have been falsified.
Thinking.
Hong Kong's Highways Department conducted their own tests on the concrete.
It's unfortunate there's not a coal source over here.
With engineers stating that the bridge had been designed to withstand a magnitude 8 earthquake, a super typhoon, or a collision with a 300,000-ton cargo vessel. Now completed, and despite its setbacks, this 55-kilometre ocean crossing is the centerpiece of the.
So the closest coal is the facility that we've already got set up, basically.
That better connects one of the world's most populated regions and opens economic opportunities.
Because I want to say our, well, no, because that facility's over there. It's about the same distance as those ones.
They say everything's bigger in Texas, and that's definitely the case for the state's latest megaprojects.
But we are just going to, so the plan is we're going to start building, localized facilities that'll start producing basic materials, and then we're going to find a way to get everything shipped here to this base, because this is our main base.
If it ever gets finished.
I'm talking.
Halfway through the projects, investigators halted construction after they found a number of safety concerns that, if left untreated, could cause the bridge to collapse. Now the project is over budget and way past its original 2020
Did he just phase out of
deadline,
existence?
and officials are
This game reminds you of No Man's Sky. Yeah, it's got a similar aesthetic.
Problem.
Objective's very different, but same kind of aesthetic, so I could see it.
Day, the pressure is on to fix the new one before it's too late.
Okay, so
Corpus Christi, Texas, home to one of the largest US ports, this mid-sized city has served as an important gateway into the country for over a century. And over the years, it's been engineered to adapt as the world changed around it. To accommodate the rapidly growing oil and gas industries following World War II, the port needed to build a wider passage and a larger bridge for ships to pass through. And so the state took on one of its biggest construction challenges yet, the original harbour bridge.
We'll figure
it was an incredible feat of engineering built without the use of modern computers. And when it opened in 1959,
you know what, we're just going to immediately, we don't need to do this one just yet, but we're going to, since this now has power,
igniting.
We're going to see about getting power run over to our
Texas for more than half a century.
Set up facility so far. We only got the one that's hooked up and ready.
The structure has yet again become outdated compared to the size of bridges in today's ports. So now the state is building another new bridge to accommodate larger ships, meet updated safety measures, and lower maintenance costs. Not only will the old bridge be demolished, but over 10 kilometres of new bridge and roadways are also being designed and developed. The new design will be a cable-stayed bridge where the road deck is supported by cables connected to road pylons or towers. Now that's different from a suspension bridge where the cables spread out across the suspender between the towers. On the new harbour bridge, cables will stretch from the towers to the road deck to carry 6 lanes of traffic and a shared bike and pedestrian path. The deck will sit an incredible 62 metres above the surface of the water, high enough to clear the massive new ships coming in. Construction started back in 2016 and was due to finish by 2020, but here we are in 2023 with a half-built structure. So what happens? Well, to be perfectly frank, a lot has gone wrong here. Firstly, work on the bridge has been suspended not once, but twice. Construction first paused in 2019 following the shocking collapse of a pedestrian bridge in Florida that resulted in several deaths and injuries. Now, you might be wondering what a bridge all the way over Florida has to do with Texas. Well, the collapse over there was due to an error in its initial design by Big Bridge Group, the same engineers then working on the new harbour bridge. Investigators looked into the designs and...
Yeah, that much speed isn't actually that useful because these aren't producing enough materials yet for that.
Construction then finally restarted in 2021. But not long after the bridge began taking shape, an independent study conducted by a third-party group found there were still 5 key safety concerns that could lead to a collapse. Construction on the main span was halted again in 2022, and the project's budget grew from around $800 million to nearly $1 billion. Here's what exactly went wrong and how it's being fixed. The first issue is the foundation system. The north and south towers of the bridge sit on top of a giant concrete slab the size of 2 basketball courts. Underneath each of them is a series of 64 steel shafts filled with concrete and steel to transfer the weight of the bridge above down onto solid ground. But the investigation found that under certain conditions like high winds, the shafts might not support the weight of the pylons and could sink into the ground. To address this, the team extended the foundations and added more steel shafts to each tower, enabling them to hold more weight without sinking. The second issue has to do with the foundation caps on each of the towers. These sit on top of a group of piles in order to equally distribute the weight to all the elements of the cable. Think of it like
anything. We're going to need to upgrade these to minor 2s.
The marble piles greatly exceeded their load capacity, which ultimately would have led to the bridge's collapse. The fix here is to create more space underground,
which will result in far more copper, twice as much copper being produced, which may actually, well,
underground, which will be supported by the newly built shaft in the first solution. The third problem has to do with the belt frame design, a critical element in a cable's
It shouldn't have a backup as it does that. That should still be sufficient, I think, to handle the situation. But
building code requires to use non-compressed steel throughout the delta frame in order to strengthen it. But the investigation found that the design didn't have the necessary reinforcements. To strengthen the connections, engineers are roughing the concrete surfaces and adding rebar that crosses the interface. The fourth problem was something called uplift occurring at 2 of the piers. This means that instead of the weight transferring down into the cable near the towers, it was causing the structure to rise up. And with the bridge's current design, the bearings aren't capable of controlling this movement if uplift occurs. This could ultimately loosen the connections and cause more maintenance issues. So engineers have added rebar to the last 2 segments on both ends of the bridge. They also made modifications to some of these external bearings to prevent decompression. The fifth and final issue was caused by placement of the cranes during construction of the main span. The way the equipment was set up during construction exposed it to high winds, which could cause parts of the beautiful bridge deck to twist. Now, workers are adding counterweights to balance out any potential movement from the weather. Then, in April of 2023, yet another issue occurred when one of these cranes caught fire, injuring 2 workers and debris fell below. The cause of the flames is currently being investigated. We reached out to the companies involved, but they declined to comment.
Well, at least it's producing the materials at a decent speed.
But as the original structure continues to age,
means we should soon have all this
construction projects like this are a high wire race. And the race to fix
a good storage of copper materials, specifically copper sheet and wire, which I need
people's lives for the better,
immensely.
Only if it's built right. This video is sponsored by Masterworks. You can skip their waitlist at the link below. Don't forget that we're inspiring the next generation
and then
of builders
eventually, once we've got enough of them stockpiled,
subscription service. You can learn more
these
and get started
will
today
feed into
over
this
at
one.
brickroad.com. And as always, guys, if you enjoyed this video and you want to get
actually
more
is
from the
why
definitive video channel for construction, make sure you're subscribed.
Do that. That way there's not a choke point here. Whenever we do start having those all get filled up, we won't have to worry about materials getting stuck here and not being able to feed into the machine. And that'll also mean that we don't have to worry about these eventually filling up and then stopping production like we have going on in the other facility. Because the other facility, that's an issue. Like, my factory keeps stopping its work because it fills up all of its storage.
Sit back and relax. We're going to dig into some of the world's most impressive tunnel building projects.
Let's check. Let's see. So how does that look on the power system? We're not even halfway yet on maximum consumption, and we're not using maximum consumption right now anyhow. Which is good to know.
Welcome to the Faroe Islands! Except I'm not in the Faroe Islands. The B1M team and I have only made it as far as a hotel here in Copenhagen. Because yesterday, having got up very early to fly from London to Copenhagen and work today in the airport and then expecting to go to the Faroe Islands, everything got cancelled because of the weather, and it doesn't look like anything's going to the Faroe Islands anytime soon. Now, I promise you, this little travel nightmare is actually relevant to the underwater tunnels on the Faroe Islands that we're going to
Now, when you think of the world's most impressive tunnels, the Faroe Islands might not be what immediately jumps to mind. But to connect 18 rugged bits of land formed from volcanic rock, they've had to get pretty good at tunnelling. Now, they're working on their biggest project yet. This so-called jellyfish roundabout is a work of art in its own right. It's a critical piece of infrastructure that's cut travel time between two of the most populous islands from more than an hour to just 15 minutes.
Ow.
Welcome to one of the world's most impressive and remote construction projects.
So like an example of what we were talking about, like over here, we're not making iron plates right now because we have maxed out our storage on iron plates.
Life here in the Faroes,
which is great from like a perspective of we've got plenty of iron plates if we need them, but not great from the perspective of the foundry isn't doing anything right now. You know?
That can make getting around a little difficult, or even impossible, as we learned just trying to get there.
The Faroes are known as the land of maybe. Now you know why.
The Faroe Islands sit between Norway and Iceland in the North Sea. They're a self-governing nation that's technically part of Denmark. In all, its population of just over 50,000 people and some 70,000 sheep is spread out across 17 habitable islands. Up until relatively recently, the only way to travel between them was to take a boat, but the water out here can sometimes be a little bit rough. Rolling waves aside, the journey itself can take up to half a day, depending on when you catch the ferry or if it's even running. In the 1970s, a bridge was built connecting the two most populous islands, turning that half-day journey into just a few minutes. But it was back in the 1960s that the Faroe Islands began its tunnelling boom. With a little help along the way from the Norwegians, the Faroese got really good at digging tunnels. In the last 60 years, they've built 20 through narrow fjords, steep mountains, hills and the ocean. Today, there are over 50 kilometres of road tunnels for just 53,000 people. That's more than 1 metre of tunnelling for every person who lives here. Now, the Faroes is expanding its tunnelling system even further, with 2 undersea tunnels. It's the biggest investment it's ever made, with a combined price tag of nearly $700 million US.
It's just surreal how it changes the geography, and places that have always in our minds been separated by at least 50 minutes, all of a sudden are separated by 10 minutes or less. It's strange and wonderful.
The Estroy Tunnel opened in 2020 and runs for 11 kilometres to connect the islands of Streymoy, where the capital is located, and Estroy. The second Sandoy tunnel is set to open in 2023, connecting the sparsely populated villages of Sandoy with the wider internet network upstream.
The Estor tunnel will shorten the distance for the part of the population out of commute to capital Torshavn, where all the public services are, hospital, and everything else. A lot of the export from the Faroe Islands are going to and from Torshavn, so investments like these are very important for the Faroe Islands, for how you can arrange and have an efficient society.
Tighter is leading the construction of the latest undersea tunnels, which are part of a slow transition in how people get
That's a
around
bit
here.
better.
Rather than driving cars with ferries, now they can simply drive under the water. The Estuary tunnel connects more villages with the mainland and the island's main infrastructure. Travel times to the capital are reduced from more than an hour to mere minutes, and adding in some construction makes the quick stunning drive even more breathtaking. The tunnel itself is the second longest in the world that you can drive, and they've spared no detail. On the 8-minute journey, you can listen to radio stations, specially programmed to enhance your experience. And of course, there's that roundabout. 72 metres below the surface, you'll find this giant pillar of colourful rock that apparently looks like a jellyfish. The deepest part of the tunnel sits 187 metres below the water's surface. The team used a drill and blast method to excavate the area. Essentially, a hole is drilled into the rock below the water, and explosive gas into the hole, and
When we are drilling the project, there are around 140 people or something like that connected to the project. But not everybody are working at the same time. The project is running 24 hours, which means that there are 8 drilling teams, 1 in each side, and then 2 are sleeping and 4 are off.
To make sure no water gets into the tunnel, the rock is sprayed with concrete.
Okay, yeah, so that doesn't actually make any real difference, so we'll pump that back down to 3, go back down to 1.
In all, tunnel took 4 years.
Until we upgrade the production on these machines, there's not much point to doing it that way, so.
But of course, there are far less people living above a tunnel site in the Faroes, but there are some lessons to be learned here in how to build tunnels quickly and efficiently.
We are a small country, small society, where decisions can be taken quite quickly. That's one reason why we can do projects like this. And also that we have good experience doing tunnels. We are doing tunnels based on Norwegian standards, Norwegian technology.
The Estuary tunnel is expected to carry thousands of vehicles every day, and it'll cost a pretty penny at around $25 or $10 with an annual pass. But that toll revenue is going to be used to cover the cost of construction, maintenance, and future tunnel projects. The second tunnel, on the other hand, is expected to carry just 310 vehicles a day across 22 kilometres, making it the longest car traffic subsea tunnel in the world. And it comes with a price tag of nearly $500 million. It's a huge investment per capita, substantially more than other European tunnelling projects. But this isn't a densely populated nation. It's going to make a huge difference for the people it does benefit. Right now, you have to take a ferry to get from Sandoy to the mainland. The new underwater tunnel will make a 64-minute commute just 16 minutes by car.
For the people in Sandoy, which has seen population decline since the 80s, I think, it means that the rest of the country cares about them or listens to their wishes. It's a part of the whole seeing the country as one small unit and connecting it.
I do like watching my foundries at work, I won't lie.
To work up on a project like this.
It'll be even better once I get this upgraded further and the production can be cranked up even higher, but, you know.
7,500.
And it'll also help once I stop thinking about it the way that I am currently thinking about it, because I'm currently thinking about it as building foundries, and I need to be building like a centralized massive factory to handle it all. If I want it to actually go rapidly, but localized little industry like this isn't bad. And this, for now, will give us the materials we need to spin up the production and the materials that we're going to need for turning this into one giant
For
factory.
a quiet nation of just 50,000,
Take care of myself. I suppose I will.
Fine. These new tunnels can literally make the difference between getting to work, seeing family, or even reaching the hospital, or being stuck on the other side of stormy waters. With a further 2 tunnels now in the works and another 14 on the drawing board, the Pharaoh's tunneling boom isn't slowing down anytime soon.
Oh, so it has them set at different... Okay, fair enough.
Norway is home to some of the world's most stunning scenery, but it's not exactly easy to get around. For centuries, humans have found navigating its network of glacial valleys known as fjords to be a serious challenge. But some massive infrastructure projects are now making this incredible
I need you to
terrain
not stand so close to my facility. Go ahead.
A new coastal highway will transform road travel in the region, connecting
Get
7
yourself
cities
stuck.
and creating berry blossoms.
Okay, you got yourself stuck. You brought this on yourself, bud.
Built as well. The world's first full-scale tunnel. Big enough ship.
There he goes. He's just taking a nap, chat. Yeah, you got his
But
legs
now
stuck
the Statship
somehow.
tunnel has finally been approved, and work will start in 2022. Costing over $300 million and taking 3 to 4 years to complete, the project will see a new mile-long shipping route carved under the Stadthavet Peninsula.
Keel.
At its narrow
I did
point.
keel. He was keeled.
Now, we've built tunnels for boats before, like this one on the Canal du Midi in France. But the Norway project takes things to a whole different level.
Now we're starting to get back up because of the production slowdowns. Okay.
Measuring 37 meters high by 26.5
It's not
meters
terrible.
wide and with a depth
It's
of
still
12
shifting
meters,
forward,
the
but
tunnel will be big enough for ships up to 16,000 tons to pass through. This crazy project is the answer to a problem that's existed for more than 1,000 years. Quite literally since the time
that
of the
was an
Vikings,
inevitability,
traversing this part of the
so
sea
fair,
has
I
meant
guess.
a treacherous journey for boats. With frequent bad weather, tough tidal conditions and strong currents, this stretch of water is one that many ships' captains would much rather avoid. Bypassing it could be lucrative for the country's tourism sector, while other industries and trades would benefit from safer passage. It's an extreme challenge that's always required a pretty extreme solution. While the Vikings are thought to have managed by physically dragging their boats over the land, it's now possible to go through it, bringing a 2-hour trip down to about 12 minutes. Although contractors are yet to be appointed, the plan is for the upper section to be excavated first in a similar way to conventional road tunnelling, with underground drilling and pallet rigs.
Trying to think, so I'm gonna need to upgrade those, so we're gonna need some of those power slug
Construction's likely to
crystals
start at opposite ends of the
to
peninsula,
increase production
creating
on
2
that.
tunnels
That way
join
we
the
can
middle.
free
The
that
roof
up,
will then
because
have
that's
to be
the issue
reinforced
right
with
now.
concrete for stability before service
Also,
routes
Chonky, you did miss
allowing
it. You
excavated
missed
material
the
to
first
be
train
carried out.
run
Works will then gradually move downwards, layer by layer.
because you had went to lurk.
To dig out the tunnel's floor, temporary barriers or cofferdams will need to be placed at each end of the terrace stone entrances, designed by Snehetta. These will keep the water out and allow the excavation below sea level to take place. When the work's fully finished and all the services like lighting are installed and working, the tunnel...
But I will show it again anyway, so that you can see it.
In total, about 8 million tons of rock will be moved and partly recycled for future projects. That's equivalent to around 35 of the world's biggest cruise ships, or 106 million top cruises. Taking material away from the site is far from essential due to lack of decent road infrastructure around the peninsula, and damages to the wrong process. As with any world first, extensive research and testing was done to make sure the project was as hygienic possible, long before approval was given. This included building
fish.
Passing models of ships along it and simulating various conditions, researchers found that vessels...
Also, apparently I didn't need to build one on either end. Apparently these things can just go in reverse, as I'm discovering. Rebozo, fish to you as well, Fred. Welcome in. And it seems like it goes just as fast in reverse. Fair enough. doing alright. We're just playing around with the new train.
Recent events in Suez will be important for this testing context. When things go wrong, digital shipments, the trade applications, and internet links can spread. With preparations now done, all lines are built all the way from the project start, right up to its expected completion in 2025. If this mission
it also serves
works,
as our
it'll
power,
surely only
so
be a matter
it
of time
controls,
for other
it
countries
transfers
borrow the
power
idea
over to
and
here,
try
so
something
we're able
similar.
to actually
While the
run
coastal
a power
highway
line.
is
That's
far
why
bigger
this
and more
foundry is
expensive,
finally
this
up and
project
running.
will be no less of an achievement.
But now we're gonna go
It may
get
have
those
taken a
power
millennium to
shards.
figure out, but building a whole new kind of infrastructure is rarely smooth sailing.
Also, Chonky, you never explained who Crowford was, at least not this stream. I know
Walk
you
around the
mentioned it
streets of Chicago
last
and
time.
You'll see giant skyscrapers, Wrigley Field, and
Getting
lots
some
of deep
exfil
dish
zone
pizza
tasks
restaurants.
done. Oh dear.
But deep beneath all this, the city is hiding something more. 90 meters below your feet, you'll find a secret underground tunnel network that sprawls 175 kilometers beneath the metropolis and surrounding area. It's one of the largest civil engineering projects in the world. Construction's been underway since
You're gonna
the 1970s.
dive? Alright, well, we're up against bugs on the Helldivers right now.
So, what is
unfortunately.
this secret labyrinth concealed beneath one of America's largest cities? Why does it exist? And how exactly was it built without anyone noticing?
The Gloom? No, we're on a defensive operation. We gotta hold 4 planets against them. The bug divers already managed to lose 2 of them last I had checked.
Now, our built environment and the process of constructing it accounts for around 40% of all global greenhouse gas emissions. So, while many of us might not realise it,
well, that's not
if we
very
really
helpful,
want to tackle
Donkey.
climate change, it's kind of essential that we build and use our buildings, cities and transport systems in a much more sustainable way.
Let's see,
Our
where
built
do we come
world
over
is
here for
critical
fight?
in combating the effects of climate change too. Some of those effects are now inevitable, as global temperatures are predicted to rise by 1.5 degrees Celsius, regardless of the many actions being taken. Construction can help build a more
Yeah, they
sustainable
also
world
said that
and
back in
protect
the,
us from the impacts of our
back in the
changing
day,
climate.
so...
And America's Windy City is just one place deploying defences. Let's rewind a bit. Throughout the late 19th and 20th century,
Yeah, I told you I was going to tell him about
rapidly
it.
expanding. But
Have
as
him
population
potentially
swelled,
join us.
infrastructure began having a hard time.
Donkey
catching
never
up.
pays attention.
Chicago was built on top of a literal swamp,
This is so
and as
sad.
such, its geography was very flat and low-lying, and that created severe drainage problems. Following storms, mud-filled streets and pools of standing water would form all over the city. Eventually, authorities decided to construct a comprehensive sewer system, but digging an underground system would have been too expensive, so Chicago just raised the whole city out of the mud by a couple of meters, added above-ground sewer pipes, and filled the gaps in with dirt. But as one problem was being solved, another was being created. All those newly laid sewers flowed directly into waterways that eventually flowed into Lake Michigan, the source of the city's drinking water. That caused a lot of disease among residents, so officials began looking for yet another fix. And if you thought raising the city off the ground wasn't ambitious enough already, then wait till you hear this plan. The Chicago River was reverse engineered. Instead of flowing into the lake, it was redirected into the Mississippi River. Now, changing the direction of a river works like this.
He
First,
forgot
a series of
already.
locks were
This was
constructed,
so
along
sad.
with a brand
It was
new
so quick.
45-kilometre canal that sloped downhill. Pumping stations then directed water through the canal as it deepened towards the Des Plaines and Mississippi rivers, thus creating a reversal effect. To this day, the river still runs backwards. But as the population continued to swell, the sewer system that had once saved the city began getting overwhelmed. By the 1960s, sewers were overflowing more than 100 days each year. Flooding became more common, and Chicago once again found itself trying to solve a giant problem. So the Water Reclamation District teamed up with some other local entities and put a bold new plan into action. Enter the cleverly named Tunnel and Reservoir Plan, also known as the Deep Tunnel System. It's that 175-kilometre underground tunnel network set to feature no fewer than 3 reservoirs that goes right through the heart of downtown Chicago. It's meant to help manage the overflow and pollution issue. Any extra runoff water from storms could now be redirected through the new tunnels and stored in the reservoirs before being treated and eventually released. Construction began way back in 1975 with Phase 1, the tunnels themselves. Now, these weren't your average sized tunnels back then. 4 distinct systems stretched up to 10 metres in diameter and under 100 metres of solid bedrock.
We've decided we're going to make the contractor use a tunnel boring machine to create these tunnels in rock. Even though at the time, more traditional drilling and blasting techniques may have been a little bit cheaper and more reliable. They thought, well, the machine is probably not going to cause as much damage to the rock as blasting would. So they were getting, you know, maybe 50 feet of tunnel constructed in a day back when they started, and then by, you know, within 10, 15 years, they're up to 150 feet, 200 feet per day.
By the time the tunnel network was finally finished in 2006, they could manage nearly 9 billion litres of water. That's around 2.3 billion gallons. It also helped reduce pollution by nearly 85%. And while the deep tunnels construction wasn't originally built in response to climate change, it now finds itself as a critical tool in combating the effects of it.
Yeah,
According
he
to
was the one that told me about
National
Red
Climate
River. That is
Assessment,
true.
An increase in heavy rain and storms in the Midwest could lead to flooding, which may destroy property and contaminate drinking water. That's why Phase 2 of the project is becoming increasingly urgent. It consists of 3 massive reservoirs that allow the system to handle even more water. 2 of them are already complete.
Okay, yeah.
You know,
Now I
we have
remember.
these
I was like,
wheel
what
gates
was
that
I
isolate the
doing?
tunnels from the reservoirs. They
Oh,
operate,
both sides are having the
only
problem.
When the reservoir fills to completion, or if somebody's working there, we'll have to close it and isolate it. In addition, there's a grout curtain that surrounds the reservoir, and this is really to seal the reservoir, almost like a bathtub. It's almost like caulking all the holes in the rock. So what we're doing is we're drilling down a hole almost 500 feet. It's about a 3-inch diameter hole, and we're pumping it with this grout material under pressure, and that seeps through cracks, sealing it. And they put these holes every 5 feet around the 3-mile perimeter of the reservoir.
So now, when it rains in Chicago, water first flows into the local combined sewers. These were originally directed into the rivers, but now that water is intercepted by the river sewers. Then overflow shoots 70 to 90 metres down a drop shaft into tunnels deep underground. Here, water is pushed into the reservoirs where it's stored until the reclamation plants have enough capacity to clean it. That process normally occurs during dry weather or during moderate rainfall. Once the water is cleaned at the plants, it's steadily released into the river. When all 3 reservoirs are complete in 2029, the entire system will be able to hold over 64 billion litres of water. That'll continue to ease flooding and pollution after big storms. And even though construction works still have a few more years to go, Chicago is already seeing the benefits of its less species to return to the waterways. Since the 1970s, the number has skyrocketed from 10 to nearly 80 different kinds of fish. Waterfront property construction is also booming, something that's been good for Chicago's economy. The city even built a brand new riverwalk with restaurants and bars that's become a popular walking spot. Now, 64 billion litres may sound like a lot of water, and it's certainly. During big storms, the system can and will hit capacity. When that happens, it'll revert to the original process of redirecting the combined overflow into the waterways. That can cause polluted water to flood streets and basements, and further effects of climate change could of course make that a much more regular occurrence.
Model of our entire sewer network and tunnel system that we use.
Guess we'll just have to
simulate
maintain it this way. That'll have to work better.
And we look at potential expansion of the tunnel and reservoir plan. You know, but really right now we're looking at using a lot of green infrastructure. It's trying to simulate nature by having water kind of stay where it lands by infiltrating it into the ground, sending it through bioswales.
And that seems to be getting
like
stuff
that.
through there fast enough anyway,
Really,
so we'll leave it that way.
The idea is to keep it out of the sewer itself. If it doesn't make it to the sewer, then it's not going to make it to the waterway, or it's not going to back up into somebody's basement.
For more than a century, Chicago has continued to build its way out of problem after problem with some of the biggest engineering projects in the world. But unlike before, preparing for the impacts of climate change is a moving target. It's an event we can see happening across the world with a future we have no precedent for. And we'll need to prepare our cities for it in a variety of ways. The Tunnel and Reservoir Plan is just one of them, and it's a project that many other urban areas could learn from as we fight the impacts of a changing climate together. Construction is central in ensuring a sustainable future for us all. While we may all see and feel increasingly common storms like these, Chicago's way of dealing with them is much more tucked away. It shows once again the remarkable power that construction has to shape, change, and save our world, even if you can't see it happening.
There. That looks like that's got it a bit more efficient flowing at least.
Mountain region close to the border with France. Life here is quiet, peaceful,
An upside that's
easygoing.
massively
But below
increasing
ground,
our
biggest
copper
construction
material
projects is
production.
gathering pace. In just a few years, a massive high-speed railway will pass through here as part of the new Trans-European Transport Network. But there's one little problem standing in the way: a massive mountain range.
But it is good to note that that means that I do need to expand production further yet for these if I want them to run efficiently in the future. But
challenges. This is how the world's longest rail tunnel is being built.
Could be worse, and this is still good progress.
The Alps. If you want to travel between two of the biggest cities in France and Italy, then it might look quite simple at first. They're only separated by a few hundred kilometres. But in reality, the train takes around 4 hours to cross the mountains. Much of the long and winding route was constructed centuries ago, and according to some, it no longer meets international standards. The Frejus Tunnel has been around
Chunky
since
lurking again.
1871, but today it's simply not wide enough. There's only a single tube, and the line was built on a slope, so trains are using more energy than they would on a flatter surface.
Because the original lines that uses these passes, like the Brenner, the Simplon, the
this does please me greatly though to see. Now, however, that means I need to start working on getting that factory up and running next. That way we can have iron and concrete production in this area as well.
Suitable for modern freight traffic.
And yet, despite its downsides, many people still have
But I am
a soft
curious to
spot
see
for
what this
this
side's going to be like once I get
which was upgraded for modern
once these
trains
are all
back in the
filled up.
2000s. At the time of its
And they're
unveiling,
filling it a fair bit
became the
quicker
world's
now.
longest rail tunnel, where techniques like pneumatic drilling and dynamite excavation were pioneered. But over time, the line has
And
seen
will
a lot less
ensure that
use,
we have
and now it's having to make
ample
way
amounts
for
of
something
copper materials
much
going
bigger.
forward.
Since 2013, work's been underway on the Trans-European Transport Network, a
Which
huge
was
web
the
of
goal,
new
so.
upgraded transport links all over Europe. There are 9 main routes in total, including the giant ScanMed corridor running all the way from Finland right down to Malta. Now, I know we've covered that already. It's where the Fehmarn Belt Fixed Link and the Brenner Base Tunnel, a 55-kilometre railway through the Alps, are all under construction. But to complete the 3,000-kilometre Mediterranean corridor,
Gonna do
which
a
goes
raid?
from east to west
Alright.
and connects Hungary to Spain, and even
I may
larger
join y'all
holes
here in a
needed.
little bit. I think I'm
The
gonna
Montsouris
wrap
tunnel.
up stream here in a
It's the main engineering
short
section
bit.
of this new rail link between Lyon and Turin, which has been talked about since 1990.
Do a bit of a shorter stream today,
At
maybe.
57.5 kilometres, it will take the title of world's longest single rail tunnel when
But
finished, barely
maybe,
beating Brenner
maybe.
and the
I haven't
Gotthard
settled
Base
on it
tunnel,
yet.
which completed in 2016. Cleverly called the Lyon-Turin
You'll be
line,
in VC then?
used
I'm
modern
sure
methods of
Chunky
construction to go
is
much
playing
deeper
the game.
underground
He
than
could
the
probably
current
join you
railway,
as well.
meaning no uphill climbs and a more direct route. But it also means tunnelling through a lot more mountainous rock.
That's the reason it's called a base tunnel, because instead of gaining heights, going up the valley and trying to get the shortest point possible to go across the mountain, the stiffness of the line has to be very low. Of course, you have to be in the base of the mountain, so your tunnel gets, instead of 13, it gets 50, 55,
Good thing is, this will make
kilometers.
sure that I can build my pipes that we're going to need, because we're
Built
going to
for
be building a
passengers
lot
and
of pipes
freight,
going
it'll stretch
forward
for
once
over
we start getting this
270
place spun up
kilometers in
proper.
total, with 70% of the line in France.
Might also
and
move the
30%
space
in
elevator
Italy.
again, see about moving it over to
Construction
there
management
maybe or
of the
something. I'll find another
cross-border
spot for
section is
it.
being
I don't want it
handled by
like
the
in the
Tunnel
center of
European
the
Lyon
facility
Turin, or
once it's all spun up,
TELT,
but
co-owned
that's
by
for
the French and
that's
Italian
for in the
governments.
future. I also
There's
need
a joint
to
approach
see
to the
about getting
funding too.
those
The whole line
materials
is set
done.
to cost around $27 billion, with $9 billion going on the main tunnel. 40% of the money is coming from the EU, with Italy putting in 35% and France the remaining 25%. Not only is the new line a key link in the European network, it promises big environmental benefits.
It's just kind of a pain in the
Once
butt.
operational, the railway is predicted to take over 1 million trucks off the road, which would reduce CO2 emissions by 3 million tonnes a year. Then there's the time saving. It'll knock 2 hours off the current travel time between the two cities. With the new tunnel, it's fair to say that technology has moved on a bit, but for a lot of the work being done so far, the idea is actually quite similar. To get through areas of particularly hard ground, construction teams are still using the traditional drill and blast approach. This involves a combination of large drilling machines that carve their way through the rock and good old-fashioned explosives. But of course, on a 21st century mega project like this, newer methods are being implemented too, including massive tunnel boring machines or TBMs.
So you cannot really use one only method of excavation. You cannot have a proper knowledge of what's underground because you cannot do this normal coring and sampling you do for like subways, where you just go on the surface, you do some sampling down the ground along the route that your subway will take, that would go like 15-20 meters below the ground. What they do is this like exploratory tunnels, so a lot of this work has been done, and this is to know what's inside. I mean, you have to dig before you dig.
Of the 162 kilometres of underground sections that need to be built overall, including all the access tunnels and shafts, around a fifth have been completed, with much of that construction work done between 2015 and 2019. For a while after that, not a great deal happened, partly due to the pandemic, and it hadn't been decided which companies would be carrying out the remaining work. That was until 2021, when 3 massive contracts were signed, but only in France. Now, the entry portal and the main tunnel are underway. The plan for completing the construction works over in Italy is due to be announced sometime in 2023. On the base tunnel itself, there's quite a long way to go. Only just over 10 kilometres has been completed in one direction on the French side. That was done using a TBM fantastically called Federica, which spent 3 years burrowing through the mountain's most complex geology. Once finished, it was taken apart and removed through one of the shafts that had been built earlier. A further 7 TBMs are going to be used.
Let's see if I can find someone to raid real quick.
Now, to create a tunnel like this, it's not all about digging horizontally. You've got to go upwards a bit too. Why? Well, because you need ventilation, mainly so that the air is breathable and free of smoke if the tunnel needed evacuating. At the Montigny base tunnel, 4 ventilation shafts are being constructed, each 5.2 meters in diameter.
We shall be back again tomorrow, for we were here. A little bit of a shorter stream today.
World Financial Center.
I'll consider maybe doing like another secondary short stream later tonight. Don't know. Don't know. If it does, it'll be Gorilla Stream. It'll appear when it appears. But regardless, you all have a wonderful rest of your day. God bless y'all. I appreciate you being here. Stick around for that raid.
Now, if you've watched 1 or 2 of our videos on huge...
Here comes the cavalry. Orbital barrage incoming. Stand clear.
I hear something. Where are you? Where'd you go?
Head back to that central